Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 11 of What If the Transformers crash landed in code Geass. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. United we stand. RC pulled onto the bridge of the Ark in her vehicle mode, this time however having 2 passengers with her instead of 1. The one up front was of course, her human partner, Colin, the other was the newest addition to the Black Knights, Shirley Finette, who was clad in her own Black Knight uniform, the standard version suit for the female members of the organization. You made it, we're glad. Lelouch, who was clad in his Zero outfit, only without the mask, said as he, Ogie, and Fix-It were waiting for them. The only other occupants on the bridge were Ratchet, who continued to work at his personal station, and CC who just sat on the floor of the catwalk. Well, it's not like we were on an important mission or anything. Colin said as RC transformed behind the girls. She looked towards Shirley. How's the uniform? A little tight, but more comfortable than my school uniform. Shirley said somewhat nervously. You must be Shirley, Colin's told me about you. Ogie said as he approached the young girl. Yeah, and you're Mr. Ogie, right? Shirley asked, still feeling a bit nervous. Yep, and hey, there's no need to be so nervous around us. Ogie assured her. We're not racist or anything, heck we even got some support from Britannian citizens, we're not so closed-minded to think all Britannians are bad. Colin trust you, and anyone who's a friend of Colin's is a friend of mine. Ogie offered his hand for her to shake. Shirley shook his hand with a relaxed smile. I'm glad, and I'm looking forward to working with you, Mr. Ogie. Ogie chuckled. Just Ogie, please. Lelouch had a bit of a smile, glad to see Shirley getting along with the group already. He glanced towards Colin and RC with something of a concerning expression as he thought back to their conversation about Shirley joining. Flashback, yesterday. You want to be a Black Knight? Lelouch exclaimed in shock as he and Rai looked towards Shirley in surprise, who stood along with Colin and RC, the conversation taking place in the Ark's groundbridge bay. Yes, I do, Shirley confirmed. Shirley, Rai stuttered. Look, I'm glad you want to help us, it's just. No, absolutely not. Lelouch protested immediately before turning to Colin and RC. Why'd you two even bring her here? Why didn't you try talking her out of it? We tried. RC shrugged. She's a lot more stubborn than she looks. She was practically begging us, Lelouch. Colin confirmed. We even told her about the Decepticons, and even, Arachnid, and what they can do, but she still insisted on it. Shirley, look, this isn't like the student council at school. Rai told her. This is war. Life and death. You're not just my friend, you are one of the few people I have in my life, and, when I thought you were going to be killed by Mao, I almost lost it. I don't want to lose you, none of us want to see you get hurt. Rai, Shirley looked at him with an understanding expression. That's so sweet, you care about me so much, but, you're my friend too and I care about you just as much. If anything happened to you I don't know what I would do either. It's not just Rai, Lelouch told her in a stern yet understanding tone. Shirley, you have to understand, like Rai just said, this is war. If you do this, you'll be essentially a traitor to your own country, and if you get caught, you'll likely be executed for treason. You have no idea how low Britannia will stoop, and it's not just them. The Decepticons, I don't know what Colin and RC have already told you, but the cons are pure evil. You have no idea what they're capable of. Shirley had listened to everything Lelouch had said and took a deep breath to speak calmly before replying. Lelouch, I already know what they can do. I know what happened to Cybertron, RC's old partner, and even Bumblebee's voice. I know I haven't seen any Decepticons and I wouldn't mind not being around them myself. I also know I'm no soldier and I can't fight, but, after hearing what you and Nunnally went through, what the Decepticons and Britannia have done and what they're capable of, I can't sit by anymore while you and our friends risk your lives fighting monsters as evil as that. If there's any way I can help, even just a tiny bit, that's enough for me. Please. Shirley bowed her head to him, surprising Lelouch. Please let me join you. I'm sure there's something I can do, even if you have to make me a janitor or a cook, that's enough. But I have to do something. Please. Lelouch had no idea what to say at first. Shirley was begging to join him, and even saying she was alright if she was put in a small position. Lelouch was certain that there was some way she could help, and considering some of the new recruits the Black Knights have gained were Britannians, he knew that she wouldn't face any discrimination. He could even see that she'd get along with some of the Autobots. She's already getting along with RC a bit, up to the point where RC and Colin even brought Shirley here just to speak with them. But he was also quite scared. He almost lost her at Mao's hands, and he wouldn't want to think what Cornelia or his father would do to her, or even Vivi after learning about him from CC. Or worse, what would happen if she was captured by the Decepticons? He cared about her a great deal, and he didn't want to see her hurt. He glanced towards Colin and RC as they nodded to him. They seemed to think she'd fit right into their alliance. "I think she'd fit right in, Lelouch," Rice said to him, causing Lelouch to look in surprise. "I mean, if she's not in danger, I don't see a reason why she can't help. I don't want to run the risk of losing her again either, but it would be nice to have her along." Lelouch took a deep sigh as he seemed convinced. "I'll have to talk with Optimus about this." Shirley looked up to Lelouch with a hopeful smile. "You mean? Like I said, I have to talk with Optimus about this." Lelouch explained. "We lead this alliance together. His input is just as valuable to me. But, let me make some things perfectly clear, Shirley. First off, if you are brought into our ranks, you'll be minimally involved, no combat operations. I'll have someone I trust help you to get acclimated. I know Colin and Rai here want to help, but they're soldiers and have their place on the battlefield. This person will help you in the field that you'll be assigned in. I might even have one of the Autobots help you." "Alright, what else?" Shirley asked. "Secondly, you can't tell anyone about my identity," Lelouch continued. "Only the Autobots, Colin, Rai, CC, and few others have seen my face and know my former status as royalty, and even fewer know about my Geass. I plan to tell them eventually, but not right away. So, whenever I have my mask on, you'll address me only as Zero. Is that clear?" "Yes, I understand," Shirley nodded. "Whatever it is you have me in, I promise I'll do my best." End flashback. Despite Lelouch's initial worry, he was glad to see Shirley getting along well with his allies in the Autobots and the rest of the Black Knights. He spoke with Optimus and even agreed she'd be safe with them, on the condition that she'd be placed in non-combative role, which Lelouch was already set on. Maybe this would turn out just fine after all. "Hello Shirley, it's good to see you again." Fix-It rolled up towards her. Shirley, in turn, smiled at him. "Nice to see you too, Fix-It." She looked up towards the medic, still working. "Hey Ratchet." He simply turned and gave a nod in her direction. "CC." She waved toward her, as CC gave a slight wave in response. "So, where's Rai and everyone else?" "Optimus and Ironhide are working with Kyoto at the moment," Fix-It explained. "Cliffjumper and Bumblebee are on an Energon scouting mission. And Bulkhead, Rai, and Wheeljack are working with Kates to try and find the Four Holy Swords." Ogi also said. "The Four Holy Swords?" Shirley asked. "The best pilots in the entire JLF." Colin explained. "We hadn't seen them since Narita. And considering the reputation their leader Toto has, not to mention they're good enough to hold their own against the cons in Beret, they'd be valuable assets." RC added. To say Shirley was impressed would be an understatement. "They sound amazing. I can't wait to meet them." Meanwhile, CC walked toward Ratchet while he was still working. "Looks like we got another lively new recruit." She teased the medic. "Are you sure you can handle that? This place already has over 100 humans in it rather periodically, and the numbers are only growing larger. One additional human won't be an issue," Ratchet said logically. CC smirked slightly. "You might be careful, Lelouch might have her your new assistant." Ratchet shuddered slightly. Honestly, he preferred this immortal girl when she was stoic. Changing the subject, "You are certain there isn't some type of connection between you and VV?" CC's smile faded at the mention of that name. "We already talked about this. VV cannot track me. He might try to contact me and talk to me, but I just ignore him. He doesn't know the Ark's location, and neither does Charles for that matter." "And you still have no idea what kind of Geass the Emperor has?" Ratchet asked. "All I know is that Charles does indeed have a Geass," CC explained. "I don't know what type of Geass he has, but he has one. I also know he's been working on something he doesn't want Megatron to find out about." "And that is also the reason you left their group?" Ratchet asked. And Clovis' experimentations on you wasn't connected to the Emperor or the Decepticons. Yes, to your first question, and no, to your second. CC responded. Ratchet mused his thoughts for a moment. After she told him, Optimus, Lelouch, and Fix-It, they relayed this information to RC, Colin, Cliffjumper, Bulkhead, Rye, Wheeljack, and Ironhide. They all found it to be quite disturbing and agreed to keep this quiet from the other Black Knights for the time being, though Lelouch plans to tell the Black Knights leadership later. Now was not the time. The Autobot medic's thoughts were interrupted by a small beep on his station. That's odd. What's odd? CC asked. Ratchet brought up a screen from his station, allowing CC to see a three-dimensional landscape with a strange reading in the form of a vortex. This is an extremely unusual magnetic flux, for any planet. The Nemesis. Soundwave had picked up the exact same readings and showed it on his visor toward his lord and master. I recognize this magnetic signature, Soundwave. Megatron said. And it would be unfortunate to have a Decepticon invention such as this used against us. I will secure the weapon, Lord Megatron. Breakdown volunteered. Breakdown. HMPH. Megatron scoffed. Even with our forces to aid you, you've been repeatedly bested by the Autobots and their Black Knight allies. What chance do you have alone? Allow me to redeem myself, Master. Breakdown pleaded. What I have lost is a constant reminder that I must never again fail you. And nobody wants to make the one who did this to me dead any more than I do. Megatron raised an eyebrow, mostly for mere amusement. He acknowledged Breakdown as one of the strongest of his soldiers, but given how the Autobots and their Black Knight allies virtually never go anywhere alone, perhaps Breakdown should have some assistance of his own. Very well. Megatron nodded. However, you will have a partner for this mission. I'll call Knockout and, Breakdown said, but was interrupted by his leader. No. I'll have you joined by our newest recruit. He needs to get his feet wet, and to have someone ruthless by his side in order to help flush out his naivety. Camelot Division. Bad news, Suzaku. Lloyd said enthusiastically toward the honorary Britannian as he worked on his homework. You're lined up for a new mission. A new mission? What is it? The Black Knights and the Autobots. Suzaku stood up immediately. Nope. Apparently the Decepticons have found some strange magnetic flux going around near the base of Mount Fuji. Lloyd said. You're to meet Breakdown and investigate it. Just Breakdown? Suzaku asked. Yes, though we don't expect the BKs and the bots to make an appearance, it's not totally unexpected. Lloyd said. And since it's an order from your Lord Megatron, you can't really say, no, can you? Suzaku was hesitant for a moment. The thoughts and doubts he experienced since his time with Euphemia a few days ago hadn't faded. However, he had a mission and he would see it through. I'll do it. The Ark. Bulkhead pulled onto the bridge, heavy metal music blaring through his speakers. Tamaki jumped out of Bulkhead's driver's seat, imitating a guitarist. Bam. Ba. Ba. Bam. Did you have to turn it up so loud? Rai complained as he felt his sore ears, along with Kagaya. What, you got a problem with my taste in music, kid? Tamaki questioned. You like heavy metal, that's fine. But don't blast our ears out. Rai complained as he looked towards Bulkhead, who transformed and turned off the music, causing Tamaki to pout. Sorry, Rai. Bulkhead apologized to the amnesiac youth. Thanks, and my apologies to you, Lady Kagaya. Rai told the youngest member of Kyoto. Tamaki has some self-control issues. Rai's commented caused Tamaki to pout even further while looking away. My ears accept your apology. Kagaya smiled before the group turned, having finally noticed Lelouch, Colin, Shirley, Ogi, and RC. Remember when the Black Knights weren't a high school club? Tamaki muttered, only to get elbowed in the side by Rai. Hey Shirley, how you doing? You know, that uniform looks great on you. Rai complimented on her new status as a Black Knight. Oh, thank you, Shirley smiled with a small blush on her cheeks. So, you must be Shirley. Rai and Lelouch told me much about you. Kagaya approached. I'm sorry, but who are you? Shirley, this is Kagaya Sumeragi. Lelouch introduced for her. She's one of the heads in Kyoto, a personal friend of mine, and Suzaku's cousin. His cousin? Shirley voiced in surprise. Yes, Lelouch told me about how you and Suzaku are classmates. Thanks for keeping an eye on him. Kagaya smiled. Oh, you're welcome. Shirley smiled back. Very nice to meet you, Lady Kagaya. Bulkhead. Ratchet called to the largest Autobot. I need you back in the field. What's going on? Lelouch asked as everyone directed their attention toward Ratchet. An unusual magnetic disturbance at the base of Mt. Fuji. Ratchet answered. Britannia. Decepticons. RC asked. I'm not entirely sure. Ratchet replied. But this could become a serious problem if left unchecked. Alright, but take RC, Colin, and Rai too. Lelouch said to Bulkhead, much to the surprise of the others. If the Decepticons or Britannia become involved in this, it wouldn't hurt to have backup. Makes sense. Colin shrugged. We'll just grab our nightmares real quick. Is there anything I can do to help? Shirley asked. Sorry Shirley, not for a field mission. Rai said. Don't worry, it shouldn't take too long. Let's get going kids. Bulkhead said as he and RC both transformed, while Colin and Rai boarded their respective partners before driving from the bridge toward the Nightmare Bay. But they just got here. Shirley was a tad upset some of her friends were leaving before they even had a chance to talk. It's the price with being in this group. You never know when something's gonna come up. Ogi assured. Shirley, during this time you'll be working with Lady Kagaya. Lelouch told her. I've assigned you to the intelligence unit, Kagaya will help you get acclimated in that field. Really? Shirley asked in surprise, though it was a good one since Lelouch had already figured out a way where she can help. Yep, you and I are going to be spending quite a lot of time together Shirley. Kagaya told as she held both the older girl's hands. But right now, time for some girl talk. Wah, wait hold on. Kagaya pulled the confused Shirley away, not sure what she meant by girl talk. Lelouch winced inwardly, though he knew Kagaya was a good person and would definitely help Shirley, as she was one of the few people he trusted around Nunnally during their stay at the Kururugi residence before the invasion. It didn't mean she a bit eccentric to say the least. God, Lelouch could only pray that Kagaya and Millie never meet. Looks like your girlfriends are getting along just fine. Tamaki teased Lelouch. I don't have a harem, Tamaki. Lelouch's eyelids lowered in annoyance. He then got serious before addressing Tamaki again. So, where's Wheeljack? I thought he was with you in Bulkhead. Met up with OP and the big guns in Kyoto looking for the holy swords. Tamaki answered. You still haven't found them? Lelouch asked. I'm pretty sure we're not going to find the legendary Kiyoshiro Toto unless he wants us to find him. Ogi replied. Lelouch looked downward slightly. He had nothing but respect for the miracle worker of Itsukishima, and he would be invaluable in their growing conflict with Britannia and the Decepticons. Toto's proven strong enough to take care of himself, in addition he has the holy swords with him. Lelouch said. In the meantime, we have another guest we need to look after. Lelouch, still clad in his Zero outfit, along with Tamaki and Ogi met with Fixit and CC just outside the medical center. Well, Lelouch asked the pair. Her injuries have fully healed, save for the scars on her back. Fixit answered. And you're sure she doesn't remember anything? Lelouch asked once more. CC and our medics gave her a series of tests and it seems that's the base case. Fixit glitched. She doesn't even know her own name. She even asked me about my parents, thinking I was a teenager in high school. CC commented. Well, you do look really young. Tamaki pointed out. How old are you anyway? You tell me. CC replied. So, what are we going to do with her? Ogi asked. Has she seen any of the Autobots? Lelouch asked. No, all her medics have been human, and myself. CC answered. She hasn't even seen Fixit yet. Lelouch began to think, until Ogi spoke. Hey Zero. If it's alright, I can look after her. That suggestion not only took Lelouch and Tamaki by surprise, but even Fixit and CC. Seriously? You wanna look after a damn pureblood? Tamaki questioned. It's like they've said, she doesn't remember anything. Ogi responded. Why do you want to look after her? Lelouch asked. I don't know, Ogi rubbed the back of his head. I mean, I helped to find her. So I guess I feel a little responsible. I found her to Yano. Tamaki pointed out. Yes, but Ogi seems the least likely of the two of you to do something to her out of spite. CC said bluntly, causing Tamaki to scowl at the immortal. Alright, Lelouch nodded. I trust you, Ogi. But she can't stay here. He turned to fix it. Can she be moved? I need to conduct a few more tests before she's ready. Fix-It answered. Human biology is much more complicated to understand than Cybertronian. Okay, but Ogi, she shows any signs of regaining her memories, let us know immediately. Lelouch made that last point rather clear. She was able to see my face. I want to know how she connected the dots so that no one else can follow the same trail. I understand. Ogi nodded. I'll go in and introduce myself to her. Is that alright? He asked Fix-It. She's fully conscious, so that would be alright. Fix-It responded before Ogi walked into the medical center to get acquainted with the amnesiac pureblood named Valletta. Breakdown held his own scanner as he walked along the rocky landscape at the base of Mt. Fuji, with the Lancelot slowly rolling by his side, piloted by none other than Suzaku. Breakdown's scanner seemed to pick up the source of the magnetic flux further down a small hill. Jackpot. Breakdown walked closer toward their target. As Suzaku trailed behind, he noticed the screens on the Lancelot glitching a little bit. Breakdown, something's wrong. My systems are slowing down. Probably the flux. Breakdown guessed. That little white nutcracker still working alright. The controls seem to work just fine. Suzaku answered. So, what exactly are we looking for? Oh, just your typical Decepticon WMD. Breakdown answered. WMD? Suzaku asked. Weapon of mass destruction, idiot. Breakdown told him. That took Suzaku by surprise. Though Breakdown couldn't see the young honorary Britannian's face in the nightmare, he noticed it stopped briefly. Oh, don't act so surprised. In case you've forgot, kid, you're piloting a WMD right now. Suzaku grunted. He couldn't deny that was true. The Lancelot was one of the most powerful nightmares out there, and it was capable of an enormous amount of destruction, even though Suzaku would want to avoid something like that. As he saw Breakdown move near a large pile of rocks, the large Decepticon's hand turned into a hammer as he began to smash and dig away at the boulders toward their intended target. Hey, Breakdown. This might be an odd question to ask, but why are you a Decepticon? Breakdown looked towards Lancelot questionably. Why? Doing a report at school or something? Just please tell me. Suzaku replied. The large Decepticon rolled his only optic. Because of Megatron, one of the few bots I ever lost to. That caught Suzaku's attention. What do you mean, lost to? Long story short, during the war on Cybertron, he and a bunch of cons took out this dam. Breakdown explained. I challenged Megatron to a fight, to see if he was tougher than I was. I told him if he beats me, I would join him. I didn't even last a full minute before I was on the ground. He scoffed slightly. But I don't expect anything less from the gladiator of Kaun. Suzaku's eyes widened slightly before they narrowed, almost accusingly. You joined the Decepticons, just because you lost a fight. I thought you. Kid, I ain't one of those philosophy jargons or whatever. Breakdown dismissed. But let me tell you something, you wanna get far in life, you gotta be strong. 'Cause at the end of the day, Breakdown gave a yell as he smashed the pile of boulders with his hammer, to reveal the device he and Suzaku have been looking for. It's the strongest that get all the perks. Breakdown held an odd-looking handheld device. Though Suzaku saw the device on the monitors of the Lancelot's cockpit, he was mostly thinking about what Breakdown just said. He pretty much openly admitted he doesn't care about anything else other than fighting and being the strongest. True, one would need strength to get far in life, but it wasn't the only real purpose to life, was it? Suddenly, there was a small ding on the radar. Breakdown, something's coming. Suzaku's warning was right in tune with an odd sound that the large Decepticon heard across the area. Breakdown was on high alert as he produced his shoulder cannon. Heads up, kid, we got company. The Autobots. Black Knights. Suzaku wondered as he readied the Lancelot. Guess again. They both turned to see the rogue spider con Arachnid perched in between several large rocks, just as she chuckled and used her spider legs to launch herself and land a kick in Breakdown's face to knock him down. Arachnid! Suzaku exclaimed in shock, and that shock was the opening she needed to pounce onto the Lancelot with her spider legs and kick it down with her own natural legs before scurrying to the downed gauntlet device and picking it up. Hello, Suzaku. Arachnid greeted in a casual, yet sadistic tone. Led any massacres lately? In direct response to that, Suzaku shot the Lancelot straight at Arachnid, launching the nightmares/Harkins at her, but she used her spider legs to jump high into the air and avoid the Harkins that hit the ground. While airborne, she shot some of her webbing at the Lancelot's feet, trapping the tires underneath and halting its advance. "Is that any way to treat a lady?" Arachnid teased as she landed behind the Lancelot. "After spending all that time together. Mind if I cut in?" Breakdown grabbed Arachnid by the shoulder and knocked her back with the swing of his hammer, simultaneously knocking the gauntlet device out of her grip. Arachnid skidded for a moment but hissed at Breakdown. This also gave Suzaku an opening to draw one of the Lancelot's MVS blade to cut through and burn the webbing at the Lancelot's feet to free it. Suzaku drove behind Arachnid as Breakdown approached from the front, surrounding her. "So, this is the rogue con giving you trouble, kid?" Breakdown asked. "Yes, that's her." Suzaku's eyes narrowed with a subtle hate at Arachnid. "Tell you what, help me hogtie her and haul her in, and I'm sure the big boss will give you a promotion." Breakdown suggested as he and the Lancelot charged forward straight at Arachnid, who curved around both the hammer strike and sword slice from Breakdown and the Lancelot respective. She leapt back to gain some distance. 2-on-1 hardly seems fair. You boys sure know how to play dirty. Arachnid taunted. "You're saying we fight dirty?" Suzaku exclaimed in disbelief. "After what you did in the ghettos." He shot at Arachnid at high speeds, who simply jumped over him with her spider legs, landed from behind and stuck to the Lancelot's back before pushing it into a large pile of rocks face first before climbing over it towards the top, literally looking down on both Suzaku and Breakdown. "Still as emotional and naive as ever I see," Arachnid said before looking at Breakdown. "And it seems like your partner isn't much for depth perception anymore, Suzaku." Arachnid taunted Breakdown and the fact he only had one eye left. "Well, not much for looks anymore." Breakdown retorted with a missile blast from his shoulder cannon, but she simply leapt back to avoid the blast just as Suzaku pulled the Lancelot back up. "Where'd she go?" Suzaku's answer came in the form of a drilling noise from underneath him and his Decepticon partner. Before either of them could address what was happening, the entire ground collapsed under them before more dirt and rocks piled on top of them as they sunk even deeper. Within mere moments, both Breakdown and the Lancelot were completely buried. Arachnid then tunneled her way back to the surface. This was one area in Mt. Fuji that had been already stripped of its energon, or Sakuradite as Britannia liked to call it, so not only was it virtually abandoned, but all the mining in the area made it easier for her to tunnel underground and trap anyone who would venture out to find her here. It was a lovely burial. Arachnid mused as she picked up the gauntlet device. "Sorry we have to part ways, Suzaku, but I never could stand the naive type." She proceeded to walk away where she heard Breakdown's muffled struggles from underground. "Sorry, can't quite understand you." Suddenly, a large explosion shook the entire area as a massive hole was blasted out from the ground. Arachnid looked up in surprise to see the Lancelot in the air, with the Varus in hand, while also spinning to deliver an airborne kick to Arachnid and send her flying and skidding across the ground. By the time she stopped, the Lancelot was directly over her as it aimed the Varus rifle at her face. "You've seen what this weapon can do, remember, Arachnid?" Suzaku reminded her. "Surrender now. I am placing you under arrest." Arachnid showed her hands, while also smirking. "Under arrest, am I? You still think you're the good guy?" She suddenly blasted a pair of energon blasts from her palms to blast the Varus out of the Lancelot's grip before Arachnid shot up her spider legs to pierce and destroy the weapon, while also shooting herself up to kick the Lancelot in the face before shooting her extra appendages at it to knock it back to the ground. However, before Arachnid could press further, Breakdown suddenly appeared over her to deliver an uppercut with his hammer and knock Arachnid back further. She looked up with a glare to see the Lancelot stand back up alongside Breakdown. "Kid, first rule of war, never give your enemy an opening." Breakdown told Suzaku. "Either you kill or get killed yourself," he said before he charged at Arachnid, who charged back. Suzaku hesitated for a second as Breakdown's words played in his head, but he ended up droving the Lancelot into the conflict as well. RC and Bulkhead walked along the rocky landscape of the base of Mt. Fuji, along with Colin and Rai who rolled in their nightmares, the Gurren Mk2 and Gekka pre-production respectively. "You sure we should be out here in broad daylight?" Rai asked. I know Kyoto's influence extends all the way to Mt. Fuji, but isn't Britannia also here? This is an abandoned mining area. RC explained. All the energon in this spot was already extracted, there's nothing left here. Colin saw the screens in her cockpit began to glitch up. Hey, something's up with the Gurren, guys. She said as she tried to adjust the settings. Yeah, the Geass screens are glitching up too. Rai reported. It's probably the magnetic flux. Bulkhead guessed. How are the controls? RC asked. If you can't work the nightmares, we might have to send you guys back. Controls work just fine, Colin confirmed. Don't worry, we can still fight. It's good to be prepared for a fight, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be careful, Colin. RC told her. This is a recon mission, and a scout should be silent but deadly. That particular comment earned a snicker from Bulkhead. RC even heard a slight giggle from Colin and Rai from their nightmares speakers, with Colin holding a hand over mouth as she chuckled. What? RC questioned in confusion. RC, silent but deadly, means something completely different here on Earth. Rai chuckled before everyone else got to the mission. The group continued to proceed as Bulkhead carried the scanner. Looks like Ratchet's magnetic flux is coming from. The group looked in surprise as they quickly lowered themselves behind some cover to look down a cliffside to see Arachnid duking it out with both Breakdown and the Lancelot. Arachnid knocked the Lancelot down with a kick and tried to make her way toward the gauntlet device they were fighting over, only for Breakdown to grab her and pull her up by her spider legs, but she was still able to deliver a kick to his face to knock him down as well. Arachnid. RC growled upon seeing her hated nemesis. Haven't seen her in a while. Colin's eyes narrowed as well. Breakdown's here too, and Suzaku. Rai noted. And they're mashing it up. Over that, Bulkhead and everyone else saw the gauntlet device they were all fighting over. The source of the magnetic disturbance. RC deduced. So, what's the plan? Rai asked. I know we're going to be fighting those two cons, but what about Suzaku? Though he was on the enemy's side, Rai held some great reluctance in fighting his friend, even Colin felt the same way. We'll just break the Lancelot, not blow it up. Bulkhead guessed. We also can't run the risk of Suzaku recognizing you too. RC said to Colin and Rai. We'll just address each other by our nightmare names. Colin replied. As far as Suzaku knows, we're not soldiers, so I don't think he'll recognize us unless we step out of our nightmares. Arachnid might. RC wasn't comfortable with Colin facing Arachnid again. But she doesn't know me from school like how Suzaku does. Besides, Colin readied the Radiant Wave Surger Claw. I've been wanting a rematch with the spider bitch for a long time. Alright, let's do this. Bulkhead said as he formed his mace weapon in his right hand. RC armed her energon blasters, while Rai readied his own Radiant Wave Surger Claw as well, the Geass sigil forming in Rai's left eye. The scuffle between Arachnid, Breakdown, and the Lancelot continued as the gauntlet device slid towards Arachnid, but before she could reach for it, an energon blast was able to knock it away from her. She looked in the direction of where the blast came from. RC. She greeted as Suzaku and Breakdown even stopped fighting to see who joined in on the battle. And look, you brought me even more partners to snuff. She mocked, referring to Bulkhead and the two Black Knight nightmares. That would be Bulkhead and two of their Black Knight buddies. Breakdown said. Who asked you? Arachnid questioned. So, looks like they're here too. Suzaku's eyes narrowed at the enemy, completely unaware that the two nightmare pilots were his classmates. Launch me, RC said to Bulkhead. The largest Autobot held out his hand for RC to step in, and with a thrust of his hand, he had launched RC into the air where she opened fire with her energon blasters at the three enemies, keeping them at a distance as she landed. The Lancelot was about to shoot right at RC, but Arachnid stepped in Suzaku's way. No, she's mine. I can't let you. Before Suzaku could even stop Arachnid, however, Rai in his blue Gekka had leapt down from the ledge as Rai swung his nightmare's revolving blade katana at the Lancelot, which it blocked with its blaze luminous shield before taking a step back to face the blue nightmare. Breakdown was more than ready to charge at the Gekka pre-production, but Bulkhead had suddenly appeared to slam his mace across Breakdown's face. RC produced her arm blades as she parried and blocked the strikes from the lunges of Arachnid's razor-sharp spider legs. Arachnid however soon found herself on the defensive as she just barely avoided the slice from the Gurren's knife as Colin tried to reach out with the Radiant Wave Surger claw, but Arachnid kept her distance with an extra jump from her spider legs. The Geass katana locked with the Lancelot's MVS as the two nightmares pressed against each other. Though Suzaku narrowed his eyes, Rai had a conflicted look on his face. "Suzaku, I'm sorry. I know you're a good person but, I have to bring you down." He saw the Decepticon emblem etched onto the Lancelot's shoulder. "So long as you're with them, I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again." The Gekka rolled back slightly to avoid a slice from the Lancelot's two MVS blades as the Gekka only had one sword of its own. As the Lancelot tried to slice at the Gekka, it leapt into the air to flip and deliver a vertical axe kick, but the Lancelot rolled back to avoid the kick as it hit the ground. Even with Knockout's modifications, that thing's as fast as the Lancelot. Suzaku thought as he launched the slash Harkins from its right hand at the charging Gekka pre-production, but Rai activated the Radiant Wave Surger as he raised its claw. The repulsing and heat-endued energy not only blocked but melted and destroyed the Harkins. The Gekka was suddenly right in front of the Lancelot with a slash from its katana, forcing the Lancelot on the defensive as it used its Blaze Luminous shield once again to block the strike. Bulkhead meanwhile blocked the hammer strikes from Breakdown with his arms before Bulkhead tried to deliver a mallet to Breakdown's fate again, only for Breakdown to catch Bulkhead's arm just as Bulkhead himself caught Breakdown's other arm and they pressed their strength against one another. Breakdown growled in anger, but Bulkhead delivered a headbutt, disorienting his enemy long enough for the wrecker to spin and slam both his arms into Breakdown's side and send him flying into a large pile of rocks. Meanwhile, Arachnid shot some web out to pin RC to a pile of rocks and trap her. However, this left Arachnid open for the Gurren Mk2 to zoom in and lash out its knife, forcing Arachnid to leap back where she tried to ensnare it as well with her webbing, but Colin raised the Gurren's claw and activated the Surger, using the energy as shield to completely burn away at the web before zooming forward and delivering a roundhouse kick, using the momentum to land a solid kick on Arachnid's face and knock her back. "I recognize that ferocity," Arachnid thought as she picked herself back up. "Is that you in there, Colin?" "You're damn right, it's me," Colin confirmed. "Don't think that this is gonna be anything like last time, Arachnid. This time, I'm ready for you." "Is that so?" Arachnid mused. "I have to admit, that's a nice toy you got right there. Let's see if it cracks as easily as the last one." She propelled herself up onto a higher perch and shot a series of energon blasts from her palms. Colin however was able to steer and maneuver the Gurren so it wouldn't get hit. She was able to jump with the Gurren and flip in the air to try and bring an axe kick down on from where Arachnid was once perched, but the Spider Con leapt down back to the ground to avoid it, but the Gurren leapt after her. Arachnid tried to lash out her upper two spider legs on her, but the Gurren produced its Surger claw again and activated it, creating a makeshift shield that not only blocked Arachnid's strike but even forced her to pull back her spider legs or else risk them getting blown up. But this left Arachnid open for Colin to lash out with the Gurren's knife and slash Arachnid in the face, creating a long cut underneath her eyes. "Look who's cracked now, spider bitch," Colin taunted. This really seemed to irritate Arachnid as she hissed at Colin and was ready to attack again, but this left her open for RC, who was free from the webbing to drive straight at her in her motorcycle form before transforming and delivering an uppercut that actually launched Arachnid into the air. "Toss me," RC said to Colin as she leapt into the Gurren's Surger claw where she, similar to Bulkhead's previous move, was able to toss RC into the air where she met Arachnid and delivered a powerful airborne kick, gaining momentum from Colin's throw, and sending Arachnid crashing down into the Lancelot, which was still locked in a duel against the Gekka and sending them both crashing into Breakdown who was just barely recovering. RC landed on the ground where she stood alongside Bulkhead, the Gurren Mk2 and Gekka pre-production. All four warriors looked ready for more, as opposed to the two Decepticons and the White Nightmare that seemed almost beaten. Even though Suzaku's eyes narrowed even further with a glare, refusing to give up. However, this also happened to knock Breakdown particularly close to the gauntlet device he and Suzaku were sent to retrieve. He picked it up in his hand. "Thank you." Breakdown pressed a button on the side as the device activated, where a gauntlet of orange lines and energy formed around Breakdown's arm, much to Suzaku's surprise. "Do you even know that does? It isn't a toy," Arachnid exclaimed as she saw a powerful surge of energy forming at the fist of the gauntlet. Seeing how bad this could be, she decided to make a run for it, using her spider legs for an extra boost. "Oh no you don't." Suzaku pursued after Arachnid, not letting her get away. This also prompted RC and Colin to chase after them as RC shot at Arachnid with her energon blasts, and for the Gurren to intercept the Lancelot and launch its Surger at the White Nightmare, forcing Suzaku to leap back. Arachnid however tunneled herself underground as RC tried to shoot down the hole in a vain attempt to stop Arachnid. Bulkhead and Rai meanwhile were about to charge Breakdown when he aimed the gauntlet at the two of them, and an unknown force suddenly began to drag both the Wrecker and the Gekka slowly toward their enemy. Wah, what the? Rai struggled with the controls as despite his best efforts, he almost lost complete control of the Gekka. RC also felt herself being pulled in by the same force, and even the Gurren was pulled in as well. What the hell? Colin questioned as she too struggled against the gauntlet's magnetic pull. Suzaku himself as in the similar boat, however, since he was further away, he maintained some control with the Lancelot as he put it in reverse at full speed, but that only seemed to keep the White Nightmare exactly where it was, even though it felt like it was being pulled in two separate directions. Despite his current situation, Suzaku could only look in awe as he saw the two Autobots and the red and blue nightmares get lifted into the air, almost telekinetically by the device Breakdown was using. Breakdown chuckled amusingly. What's this switch do? He was practically playing with the gauntlet as he pressed a certain button, that sent all four enemies flying and crashing into a pile of rocks. Now that the magnetic pull was gone, Suzaku was almost reeled back as he still had his nightmare in reverse, but he quickly brought it to a halt as he could only look in surprise at the display of power he just witnessed and was almost rendered speechless. Megatron's gonna love this. Breakdown smirked. Time to go, kid. He told Suzaku. But, what about the Autobots and the Black Knights? Or Arachnid? We have to arrest. Suzaku tried to protest. I said we're leaving. We got what we came for. Breakdown told him. That's an order. Suzaku was reluctant, but he knew Breakdown was his superior for this mission and he couldn't disobey an order. Yes sir. Breakdown then transformed into his vehicle mode and drove away with the Lancelot following him. The cockpit in the downed Gekka opened as Rai rubbed his head, while Bulkhead groaned next to him. Bulk, you okay buddy? I'll live. Bulkhead grunted. Rai turned to see the Gurren right next to the Gekka. What about you, Colin? Still in one piece. Though the cockpit didn't open, Colin shook the cobwebs from her head. Yeah, I'm alright. What about RC? I don't see her. Bulkhead looked around. I'm right behind you. Where? Bulkhead still looked around but couldn't find her as he was already standing up. The moment he was back on his two legs however, Rai winced slightly as he where RC was. Let's just say, she's got your back. Bulkhead turned around to reveal RC was completely stuck to the green Autobot's back. She wasn't tied or webbed to his back, but rather magnetized. Despite RC's struggles, she couldn't pull herself free as she simply hung from her current predicament. Rai felt his Gekka shake up a bit, causing him to hold onto the open cockpit of the Blue Nightmare as Colin had pulled the Gurren back up. But Ray's eyes widened once he saw their nightmares were in a similar position. Colin, our nightmares are holding hands. What? Colin voiced in surprise as she saw that the Radiant Wave Surger claw on her own nightmare was stuck onto the Surger claw attached to the Gekka. She tried to pull away on it, but only ended up dragging the Gekka with her as Rai sat back into the cockpit to avoid being thrown off. He tried to pull in a separate direction, only for both nightmares to remain where they were, stuck together by their silver claws. Scrap. Colin cursed. Meanwhile, Breakdown drove in his vehicle mode, with the Lancelot beside him on an old road leading away from the mountain. The pair passed an old minion operation with several abandoned drills and stations. Breakdown, why did you just leave them? Suzaku questioned. 2 Autobots and 2 Black Knights were right there. We could have captured them. Our mission was to secure the weapon, and we did. Breakdown replied. Don't worry, with this baby, pretty much all the bots and their little Black Knight pets are as good as dead. So just shut up and... Breakdown, look out. Suzaku warned as a small rockslide rolled down the hillside toward them. Breakdown attempted to swerve out of the way, as the Lancelot jumped over to try and cut through some of the rocks with an MVS, only for a strand of webbing to catch it by the foot and pull the Lancelot down into breakdown, sending them both crashing onto the ground where even more webbing was shot down to pin them down. Even as Breakdown transformed back, it only tangled him and the Lancelot even more in the webbing as they looked up the hillside to see Arachnid smirking down at them. "You've been magnetized. Together?" Ratchet questioned over the communications as Colin stood on Bulkhead's right shoulder and tried to use a crowbar to give RC some leeway and pull herself out. Rai meanwhile used a crowbar of his own to try and pry the Surger claws of the Gurren and Gekka off each other as well. Despite Colin's best efforts, the crowbar snapped, much to her frustration as she threw it away. "They're inseparable. Even our Nightmare's Surger claws are stuck together. It's almost like the Gekka and Gurren are holding hands," Rai said in exhaustion as he couldn't separate them either. "And the device that did this is on its way to Megatron," Bulkhead said. "The Arc, a polarity gauntlet," Ratchet deduced, with Lelouch, Ogi, Fixit, Tamaki, Shirley, CC, and Kagaya present as well. A deceptively simple yet diabolical creation. "So, it's basically a weaponized magnet?" Ogi asked. "Yes, that is one way to describe it," Fixit confirmed. "We had originally thought they were all destroyed during the war. Obviously, one survived," Lelouch commented. "Just tell me you can unhitch us, Ratchet," RC hoped. "It may simply be a residual magnetic charge providing your current attraction," Ratchet assumed. Tamaki snickered. "Hey, did you guys hear that? You're attracted to each other." He laughed. "Can someone please kick Tamaki in the shin for me?" Colin exclaimed. CC shrugged before kicking Tamaki in the aforementioned shin. "Ow." The hothead held his shin in comic pain. "What the hell was that for?" "She asked me to." CC smirked, causing Tamaki to scowl. Ratchet briefly rolled his optics at this display before getting back to the topic at hand. "But I'm afraid retrieving the gauntlet is our surest bet for reversing its effect. Once Megatron gets his hands on the gauntlet, he'll use it for a lot more than attaching notes and family photos to the fridge," Ogi said as he, Lelouch, Kagaya, and Fixit looked understandably worried. Lelouch, I'm not sure I follow," Shirley confessed embarrassingly. "Shirley, think about it," Lelouch explained to her. "What do Autobots, Decepticons, and Nightmares all have in common? They're made of metal. And this polarity gauntlet is basically a weaponized magnet. Yes, if Megatron can repel us with the flick of a switch, we might never again have another shot at him." Ratchet agreed. "A near impenetrable defense," Kagaya voiced with worry. "Or worse yet, if Megatron and Britannia found a way to mass-produce the gauntlet, not only could they meld our armies into a scrap pile, they might even be able to twist entire cities like pretzels," Lelouch stated. Shirley seemed to get it as a look of terror formed on her face. "Yeah, that does sound bad. Well, the good news is that the polarity gauntlet is still nearby," Fixit reported as he looked at the readings on the Ark's screen. "In fact, it's no longer in transit. If you move now, you should be able to intercept it." "You think we should call for help? Send back up?" Ogi asked. "No," Lelouch said. "With a weapon like this polarity gauntlet, both our Nightmares and any other Autobots we send will only be put in danger. Even with the condition they're in, Colin, RC, Rai, and Bulkhead are our best if not our only option." "Are you sure, Lelouch?" Shirley asked with concern. "You don't have to worry, Shirley," Lelouch told her. "Colin and Rai are the best Nightmare pilots in the entire organization, Bulkhead's a wrecker, and RC is pretty much the equivalent of a kunoichi, a female ninja. If anyone can do it, they can. Not to mention the Gurren Mk2 and the Gekka pre-production are some of the strongest Nightmares Kyoto have produced thus far," Kagaya added. "Glad we have your vote of confidence," RC commented. "Maybe if we use the Radiant Wave Surgers," Rai suggested. Whoa, and blow our Nightmares up," Colin exclaimed. "No. I mean, what if Colin and I use both our Surgers at the same time?" Rai explained. "Maybe the opposing charges could separate us. Or even affect the magnetic attraction. There is a possibility that could work," Ratchet said. "Or a more likely outcome is that the combined energies from both Surgers could create an explosion that'll destroy both of you." "Okay, sorry," Rai apologized. "We'll get the gauntlet. Call you guys back when we get it," Bulkhead said before hanging up. Meanwhile, Arachnid had just finished securing her prisoners. It took quite a bit of effort, but Breakdown and the Lancelot were both pinned underneath a series of large, nightmare-sized, sakuradite excavation drills, and even further secured by webbing that kept them all pinned together, and the drills stuck on them. Even the Lancelot's cockpit was webbed shut to prevent Suzaku from getting out. Arachnid now admired the polarity gauntlet she held in her hand. It fits. You know, a girl could never have too many accessories. You were a Decepticon, once. We could bring the prize to Megatron together. Breakdown tried to reason with her. You can't be serious, Suzaku exclaimed. After everything she's done, do you have any idea how many people she butchered in the ghettos? I think you mean 11s, Suzaku. Arachnid taunted. As in, people that Britannia would never even lift a finger to save. He narrowed his eyes through his cockpit as Arachnid smirked. Plus, I already told you that I was made a Decepticon because of what I could do. But I'm not remotely interested in going back to that boys' club. She looked at the gauntlet as an idea came to her. You know, I've actually been getting a bit bored with hunting in the ghettos. Think I might move on to the Tokyo settlement next. What? Suzaku exclaimed. Sure, the military might try to give me trouble. Arachnid continued before holding up the gauntlet. But this will provide the perfect repellent against bots, cons, and nightmares alike. Bulkhead led the group toward the abandoned excavation site, with RC still stuck to his back, with the Gurren and Gekka, still, holding hands, slowly rolling down alongside the green Autobot as he held his scanner. Still hanging in there, RC. Colin chuckled. Very funny. The blue fembot grunted in annoyance. Never had eyes in the back of my head before, or blasters to cover my rear. And you get a built-in shield. Bulkhead pounded his own chest for emphasis. Rai looked at how his and Colin's nightmare's Surger claws were still locked together. This does kind of feel like we're holding hands, doesn't it? Colin sighed. Rai, you're an awesome guy, and I trust you completely, but you're not my type. I know, and you're pretty cool too, but I just see you as a friend too. Rai replied. So just friends. Just friends. Colin assured. Well, kids already got eyes on a certain exiled prince turned revolutionary, so I think Colin's all set. RC smirked, causing Colin to blush. Fortunately, she was still inside her Gurren, so nobody saw it. Not funny, RC. Hey, now we're even. RC smirked. Bulkhead and Rai both chuckled slightly, until Bulkhead's scanner picked up their target. The gauntlet's close. They stopped as they looked towards the area they were heading in. Doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Could be a trap, Colin voiced. Suzaku isn't the type to set up traps, and I doubt Breakdown is smart enough either. Rai pointed out. But it does sound like Arachnid. RC's optics narrowed. And if she has the gauntlet, then we're in serious trouble. Colin said. Bulkhead began to think slightly. I think I have an idea. After a brief explanation, Bulkhead, seemingly alone, approached the abandoned mining area, blasters in both hands at the ready. It was quiet, too quiet, as Bulkhead moved past many of the excavation drills. He happened to spot a rather large stack of them and slowly, but surely, moved towards them, with his energon blasters ready. However, he looked in minor surprise to see Breakdown and the Lancelot at the bottom of the pile. The Decepticon had web over his face to keep him silenced as he continued to struggle. Arachnid revealed herself, crawling down from the top of the pile with the polarity gauntlet in her hand. I assume RC and both your partners aren't far behind. You might say that, Bulkhead replied. Blaster hands in the air and turn around. Arachnid demanded. Whatever you say. Bulkhead's blasters turned back into normal hands as he raised them. However, he quickly smirked as he suddenly turned around to reveal RC, still stuck to his back, as she opened fire with her own energon blasters, forcing Arachnid back. Now! RC shouted. This was the signal for the Gekka, with the Gurren right behind to suddenly appear. With a yell, Rai steered his Gekka so that as he swung his Surger claw, he swung the Gurren as well as Colin yelled in addition, using the momentum from the swing to land an extremely powerful roundhouse kick that sent Arachnid flying into an abandoned excavation rill, but it also sent the polarity gauntlet out of her hands. The second the device hit the ground, it accidentally activated, generating a perpetual attractive force that slowly began to pull all metals in the area towards it. Either function, non-functional, or living alike. Arachnid struggled against the pull herself, as did the Gurren and Gekka, with Colin and Rai putting their respective nightmares in full reverse to try and move against the pull. Bulkhead clung to the ground as RC tried to pull herself toward the gauntlet in an effort to pull themselves apart. This, however, worked in favor for Breakdown and Suzaku, as the drills that had been piled on top of the Decepticon and the Lancelot began to fall off and loosen. This gave Suzaku an opening to launch all his remaining slash Harkins, 2 from the Lancelot's left hand and 2 from its hips in a spiral fashion to tear off all the webbing and break apart all the debris piled on top of him and his comrade, also freeing Breakdown from the same predicament as he let himself get pulled toward the gauntlet, which he grabbed and immediately deactivated. The remaining momentum from the pull brought both Bulkhead and RC, still stuck together, in between Breakdown and Arachnid. While the Gurren and Gekka almost sailed backwards, but both pilots put the brakes on their nightmares and tried to zoom in to help, only to find their path barred by the Lancelot. Still up for a truce, boys? Arachnid offered Breakdown and Suzaku. Only because I hate Bulkhead more than I hate you. The large Decepticon agreed. You still have to answer for your crimes, Arachnid. Suzaku told her. But for now, the Autobots and Black Knights take top priority. Is he seriously willing to work with that bitch? Colin thought in disbelief, as any respect she had for Suzaku had just dropped immensely. However, both she and Rai were quickly put on the defensive as the Lancelot attacked. Breakdown swung his hammer at Bulkhead, who retaliated with a couple of punches to his enemy's face. RC tried to block Arachnid's own attacks and retaliated with what limited room she had with punches and kicks. However, with Bulkhead reeling back and forth, duking it out with his nemesis, it was almost impossible for RC to land a solid hit on hers, allowing Arachnid to slug her across the face. Bulkhead, would you stay still? RC exclaimed as she used an arm bladed to block a bladed spider leg strike from Arachnid. My bad. Bulkhead replied before delivering a powerful enough punch to Breakdown's face and knock him onto the ground. He then turned around to face Arachnid himself. Need a hand? No, she's mine, RC protested. At the same time, the Gurren and Gekka had to roll backwards as the Lancelot gave pursuit. Suzaku launched the slash Harkins from his nightmare's left arm, but when Colin tried to block it with her Gurren's knife, Rai tried to do the same with his Gekka's katana. Though it did block the Harkins, it also caused both the red and blue nightmares to slam into each other, allowing the white one to deliver a roundhouse to knock both of them down. Colin grunted as they both hit the ground. We can't fight like this. She suddenly yelped as the Gekka shot back up and pulled away the Gurren before Colin got a chance to stand it up, right on time to avoid an executioner's type strike from the Lancelot's dual MVS blades. Rai knew Colin was right and tried to think of a solution, the Geass sigil in his left eye still burning. However, he looked in shock as he saw in the relative distance Breakdown had gotten back up. 2 bots, 1 stone. He reactivated the polarity gauntlet in his hand and used it to magnetically lift an old, yet large, drill from the ground toward the stuck Autobot pair as Bulkhead punched Arachnid back. Guys, look out, Rai called to them. Unfortunately, the warning came too late as Breakdown had used the gauntlet to slam the drill into Bulkhead's face, sending Bulkhead toward the ground, while also trapping RC under him. She struggled to pull herself up, but Bulkhead was too heavy. Bulkhead, get up. RC struggled, only for one of her hands to be stepped onto by Arachnid, who was back on her feet. Pinned like a bug. Of course, I can think of one permanent way out of your predicament. She readied her razor-sharp spider legs with deadly intent. I'll take top side. Breakdown was ready to execute Bulkhead as well. As the Gurren and Gekka continued to back away from the Lancelot, not even giving Suzaku a chance to go onto the attack, a crazy idea came into Ray's head. Call it desperation, or something from his combative instincts drawn out by his Geass, but it might be their only option. Gurren, we need to use our surgers on the gauntlet. Both at the same time. Rai exclaimed, careful not to reveal Colin's name or identity to Suzaku. We just talked about that. Colin shouted back as she used her knife to block one MVS blade from the Lancelot, but before Suzaku would strike with the other, the Gekka came in with its katana to block the second blade as both nightmares locked weapons with the enemy unit. It's the only way, Rai shouted. Our friends and partners need us. That last statement actually took Suzaku by surprise. Friends. This however left him open for Rai to spin his Geass a full 360 degrees, spinning the Gurren around and allowing Colin to body slam her red nightmare into the Lancelot and knock it back. Colin saw Arachnid ready to execute RC, and break down with Bulkhead. It was an extremely risky move, but it was their only option. On 3. She smirked. Though Rai couldn't see hers from his nightmare, he returned with a smirk of his own. Let's do it. Both the conjoined Gurren and Geass shot straight at the two Decepticons, specifically Breakdown who still had the Polarity Gauntlet. Breakdown. Incoming. Suzaku warned as the Lancelot stood back up and rolled after them to try and stop the two Black Knights. Arachnid looked in surprise to see the two incoming nightmares at high speeds at first, but Breakdown wasn't the least bit intimidated as he readied the gauntlet once more. 1. Colin said. 2. Rai continued. 3. They both shouted as they simultaneously pressed the buttons to activate their respective radiant wave surgers. A red light shined from both their claws as they each shot an opposing charge of superheated energy. Ordinarily each one would fry a nightmare or even a Cybertronian in an instant, but since both surgers were giving off an equal amount of energy, neither the Gurren nor the Geass were overloading. All the while, the magnetic attraction kept the surgers together as the opposing surges began to grow to where the energy output was already more than double for the average surger. The intense energy surge shot bolts of energy all around the conjoined claws, surprising Breakdown and leaving him open for both Colin and Geass to yell as they shot their improvised attack right at the gauntlet. Boom! Asterisk. The result was a massive explosion that shot out a large circular wave mixed with red and orange energy that sent Breakdown, Arachnid, and even the Lancelot from behind, flying at least 100 yards away, also sending the Polarity Gauntlet out of Breakdown's grip. Both the Gurren and Geass were finally separated from each other as they too were sent flying, though their landing was much more stable, and while their respective surger claws were intact, a great deal of smoke coming from both of them. The shockwave had also managed to knock Bulkhead off RC, waking him up and allowing her to stand. I'm free, RC stated as both the Gurren and Geass rolled up, still appearing functional. How are you guys? Everything still seems to be working just fine. Colin said. My surger is really overheated though and needs to cool off, but it's still good. Yeah, same here, Rai confirmed. Bulkhead looked more than a little impressed. Nice move kids. Real wrecker material right there. Thanks partner. Now we're all free, Rai commented. Good, now it's a fair fight. Colin smirked as they saw Breakdown, Arachnid, and even the Lancelot standing back up. What do you say we mix things up a little? Bulkhead offered. I'm in. Colin was on board. Same here, Rai smirked too. Even RC liked the idea. You got me, but I get the final blow on Arachnid. Deal. All three of them said at the same time as they re-engaged the enemy. RC and the Gurren shot straight for Breakdown who was running toward the downed gauntlet. RC had leapt into the Gurren's claw as Colin launched her right at Breakdown. RC stuck her foot out to land a solid kick hard into Breakdown's face to knock him back onto the ground while Colin used the Gurren to kick the Polarity Gauntlet away before engaging Breakdown as well. RC backflipped to avoid a crushing strike from Breakdown's hammer, but Colin zoomed in with the Gurren faster than Breakdown could have seen and slashed at him with her Nightmare's knife. He tried to retaliate with a swing of his fist, but the Gurren ducked underneath, allowing RC to leap off the Red Nightmare's shoulder and deliver a roundhouse to Breakdown's face again. The Lancelot leapt into the air to avoid an energon blast from Bulkhead as the wrecker ran towards the descending White Nightmare. Suzaku drew an MVS as he fell and slashed at Bulkhead's chest and landed before trying to spin and land a kick onto Bulkhead, only for the Autobot to grab the Nightmare by the foot. Good luck cutting through this with that butter knife. Bulkhead teased as he banged his own chest for emphasis as the only thing the MVS did was deliver a minor flesh wound on Bulkhead's mighty hide. He then spun his body, and the Lancelot before letting it go and sending it crashing into an old drill. Arachnid looked for the Polarity Gauntlet, only to find her path blocked by Rai and the Geass. May I have this dance, milady? Rai teased as even the Geass did a mocking bow. You're not my type. Arachnid replied before the Geass shot at her. She leapt back and opened fire with her energon palms, though the Geass swerved around as Rai tried to slash his Nightmare's katana at her, but Arachnid caught it with her upper spider legs before using her lower ones to snap and knock the Blue Nightmare back, allowing her to go for the gauntlet. Scrap. Rai cursed. She's got the gauntlet. He warned his friends, but it was too late. Arachnid activated the polarity gauntlet and aimed it at the Gurren. Let's leave the boys to themselves. Colin grunted as she felt her nightmare, specifically the Surger claw, that was still cooling down, being pulled toward Arachnid. The claw was then stuck to the gauntlet, leaving Colin alone to face Arachnid. Watch closely, RC. I'm about to send your new partner to join your old one. Arachnid called to RC, however, the Gurren quickly rolled at high speeds, surprising Arachnid as the red nightmare drove her into a large old drill. RC, I got this. Colin exclaimed to her partner as she broke away from Breakdown to try and help her. Just help the others. RC was surprised at first, before she nodded with a smile. She's all yours. She then transformed and zoomed straight at the Lancelot, who was still against Bulkhead before she transformed again and landed a flying kick to the Lancelot's side to send it skidding back. Tag team, RC said to Bulkhead as the Gekka joined RC. Mind if I cut in? Rai smirked. Bulkhead nodded. Go for it. He then ran to engage Breakdown. RC drew her arm blades to parry the strikes from the Lancelot's MVS, but when Rai joined in with the Gekka's katana, it put Suzaku on the defensive as he tried to roll back before shooting his slash harkens from both the Lancelot's left arm and hips, forcing the two to split. RC opened fire with her Energon blasters, which Suzaku blocked with the Lancelot's blaze luminous shields. Rai then rolled around the side and sliced down with his Gekka's katana, which Suzaku blocked with the shield on the Lancelot's right arm, but this left him open for RC to slide in and sweep her feet to knock the Lancelot down onto the ground. Bulkhead and Breakdown roared at each other before the latter punched Bulkhead in the face and in his abs, but Bulkhead retaliated with a punch to his enemy's jaw and another to his face. Breakdown then slugged Bulkhead, who returned with his own slug before Breakdown landed a punch powerful enough to knock Bulkhead down. However, the Wrecker was able to get back up and charge a powerful enough Energon blast from his right cannon to blast and send Breakdown flying through multiple old drills. Arachnid had leapt up and lunged all her spider legs at the Gurren to knock it onto the ground as she stood on the nightmare itself in an attempt to keep Colin pinned. One hand tied, 5 more to play with. Arachnid tried to slash with her claws on her open hand, but the Gurren launched a slash harken from her nightmare's left arm to knock Arachnid up. While both their hands were stuck, Colin pulled her Surger's claw in before using her Gurren's other arm to wrap around Arachnid in the form of a bear hug. Quality, not quantity, bitch. Colin replied before opening her cockpit, as the polarity gauntlet was so close. She was able to reach out with her own hand and press on the button to deactivate it. Before Arachnid could even respond, Colin had already sat back down and swept the Gurren's its feet to not only knock Arachnid down but also kick the polarity gauntlet while it was still airborne in one fluid motion toward her Autobot partner. RC. Colin called to her. RC turned around to see the gauntlet flying in her direction, where she leapt into the air to catch the gauntlet just as the Gurren backed up and came to a stop right by where RC had landed as she activated the gauntlet herself, with both RC and the Gurren Mk2 back to back. Gekka, go help Bulkhead. RC called to Rai, who had leapt his blue nightmare back to avoid a slash from an MVS. Alright. Rai turned his nightmare around to assist Bulkhead in his fight against Breakdown. Suzaku glared at RC, seeing no good she could do with the gauntlet. He shot the Lancelot toward her, just as Arachnid quickly tried to rush Colin. However, almost as if reading each other's minds, the Gurren and RC turned around to switch opponents. Colin used her Gurren's knife to block Suzaku's MVS just as RC used the gauntlet to project a magnetic field that repelled Arachnid and sent her flying quite a distance. As the Gurren kept the Lancelot at bay, Colin quickly ducked her nightmare and allowed RC to get a surprise attack as she used the same repulsion from the gauntlet to launch the Lancelot back as well. Opposites do not attract. RC smirked as Colin smirked back in her partner's direction. Bulkhead ran toward Breakdown as the Gekka shot alongside his partner at the enemy Decepticon. As they clashed their respective mace, hammer, and katana however, a magnetic force sent all three of them sliding back before they even made contact with each other. Breakdown tried to launch a missile from his shoulder cannon at the Gekka, but it bounced away from him by the same repulsing charge, while also accidentally sending it in the direction of the Lancelot. Suzaku. Rai exclaimed, however, just like with him, the missile bounced away from him and shot into the air before it exploded. What? Suzaku voiced in surprise. We can't touch metal. Breakdown stated. We're polarized. All of us. Bulkhead deduced. However, the polarity gauntlet was snatched away from Arcee's grip by a stand of webbing that pulled it into Arachnid's hands. She deactivated the gauntlet, simultaneously canceling out the polarity effects all 5 of them were experiencing. Always leave on a high note. Arachnid smirked as she transformed into her helicopter mode before trying to fly away. She's getting away, Arcee exclaimed. Oh no, she's not. Colin glared. Gekka, how's your surger? Cooled off, but I can't get a big enough charge to. Ray's eyes widened before he smirked, getting the message Colin was sending him. On 3 again. You need to ask. Colin replied before she and the Gekka shot in the direction of Arachnid's retreating vehicle mode. The Gurren came in from the left as the Gekka came in from the right. They both used their slash Harkins on the ground to propel them into the air in the direction Arachnid was heading. Though she tried to fly over them, it was already too late. 1, 2, 3. They both activated their surgers simultaneously as the Gurren and Gekka slammed them together in the form of an airborne high five. The shockwave wasn't as powerful as before, but it was strong enough to disorient Arachnid's flight path. The gauntlet's mine. Suzaku rolled his Lancelot forward as he shot a slash Harkin in the direction of the helicopter, only for it to be caught by Bulkhead as he actually pulled and used his own strength to spin the Lancelot by a makeshift tether and using the gathered momentum to slam the Lancelot into the helicopter mode of Arachnid and send them both crashing into breakdown. Arcee picked up the downed gauntlet as she, Bulkhead, the Gurren, and Gekka all joined back up to see the pile of defeated enemies. Breakdown and Arachnid were both unconscious, but very much alive. Is Suzaku? Rai asked with worry, hoping he didn't just kill him. However, he soon got his response as the Lancelot's cockpit hissed open about halfway and Suzaku attempted to climb out. His right arm was broken, and he probably had a few broken ribs too, with some blood trickling down his face over his left eye. Nah, he's alive, Arcee said, causing Rai and Colin to breathe a sigh of relief. We can finish these 2 cons right here and now, Bulkhead suggested, referring to Arachnid and Breakdown. And risk becoming conjoined twins again. I think I'll pass. Colin dismissed. Let's just go home. Wait, you can't take that. Suzaku was stuck in the half-open cockpit, but it wasn't big enough and he wasn't in any condition to give a pursuit. Kid, your nightmare is toast and your only allies are down. You put up a good fight, but you still lost. Just accept it. Bulkhead told him. I can't Lou, I can't. Suzaku was sounding almost desperate but looked in surprise as Arcee kneeled down close to him. Do you want to know why you keep losing? Arcee began. 'Cause we're a team. She waved to herself and her present allies. Autobots and Black Knights, we stand united and fight together. We trust each other. But the side you're on is divided in more ways than one. Britannia, the Decepticons, those guys never stick together. Take this murderous freak for example. She referred to the unconscious Arachnid. And that is why we're going to win this war. With that, Arcee turned around before transforming into her vehicle mode and driving off, followed by Bulkhead who also transformed. Colin followed in the Gurren, though Rai paid a concerning glance towards Suzaku from inside the Gekka before joining the others, leaving Suzaku to hang his head in defeat, realizing he had no choice but to accept his loss. The Arc. Arcee handed Ratchet the polarity gauntlet. Souvenir, but, Bulkhead began. We don't advise indoor use. Arcee finished. Well done, all of you. Lelouch walked up with a smile along with Shirley. I heard you two even invented a new combo move. He asked Colin and Shirley. Yep, the Surger High Five. Rai smirked. We are not calling it that. Colin said, though she smirked as well. Pretty sure it's better than anything you can come up with. Rai joked as he and Colin exchanged a fist bump. Well, it sounds amazing. I wish I could have seen it myself. Shirley said with an excited smile. It was pretty cool, but surely the battlefield isn't as fun as you think it is. Rai told her. I know. You and Lelouch already told me. Shirley assured. But K-Gaia is already getting me up to speed on what I need to do. The fact that I'm helping you guys at all is enough for me. We're glad to have you with us, Shirley. Colin offered her a hand to shake. Welcome aboard. However, rather than a handshake, the schoolgirl turned Black Knight pulled both Rai and Colin into a hug, though surprised at first, they were quick to accept it. Lelouch had an honest smile on his face. It felt really nice that Shirley was now part of his social circle. While he had no romantic feelings toward her, he valued her company and saw her as a good friend, along with many other good friends he had in the Black Knights and the Autobots. However, his smile faded slightly as he remembered there was still one friend that he really wanted in his social circle as well, even if he was working as his enemy. The red car that was known as Knockout pulled into the Camelot division as Suzaku stepped out to allow the Decepticon scientist to transform. "We're back," Knockout announced somewhat dramatically, while Suzaku's right arm was in a sling and cast, with a bandage on his forehead. He limped a bit into the room but was quickly helped by Cecile. "Suzaku, are you alright?" she asked with concern. "I failed in my mission, I apologize." Suzaku bowed his head. "Well, normally that would be quite the bummer." Lloyd walked up. "But I say that's a small price to pay considering our new clients who will be joining us as of today." "New clients?" Suzaku asked in surprise. "Yo, so you're Suzaku. Nice to meet ya." Suzaku couldn't contain his gasp as he saw Gino, Anya, Monica, and Nonette walk toward him. Though he didn't recognize any of their faces, he recognized their uniforms and knew exactly what group these people belonged to. "And you must be one of those Decepticons we're gonna be working with." Gino waved to Knockout. "Hi, I'm Gino, nice to meet ya." "And who might you be?" Knockout questioned. "Knockout, allow me to introduce to you some of the best pilots the mighty Britannian Empire has to offer, the Knights of the Round," Lloyd announced with feigned dramatics. "Hip, hip, hooray." Cecile then gave a proper introduction to the Red Decepticon. "This is Sir Gino, the Knight of Weinberg, the Knight of 3, Lady Anya Alstrheim, the Knight of 6, Lady Nonette Enneagram, the Knight of 9, and Monica Kruszewski, the Knight of 12. "Hello." Monica nodded her head. "Greetings." Anya greeted robotically as she seemed more paid attention to her cell phone than anything else right now. "A pleasure." Nonette nodded as well, though she was a bit uncomfortable about being around the Decepticons. This one seemed at least relatively friendly. "The best pilots in Britannia, huh? Well, if you got the nightmares for it," Knockout said. "Oh, we do," Gino stated. "Though they're only prototypes right now, we got our nightmares all shipped here. The Emperor told us that you would be working to provide them with upgrades and modifications that will make them able to better keep up with the Autobots," Monica informed. "Seeing that's what you've been doing with the Lancelot." That caught Knockout's attention. "Lloyd, my friend, we're gonna be very busy." He smirked to the man-child scientist. "Ooh, this is gonna be so much fun." Lloyd rubbed his hands together excitedly. "I can't wait to get started." Suzaku still wasn't over his own surprise. 4 Knights of the Round were joining them. Well, one can't say this wasn't expected considering his reluctant losing streak against the Autobots and the Black Knights. However, the words RC told him have stuck with him, in regards to Britannia and the Decepticons being divided, even amongst each other, and he couldn't deny that for Britannia, after hearing how Euphemia feels toward being a Britannian princess. "Oh, by the way, Suzaku," Cecile pulled him out of his thoughts. "Where is the Lancelot anyway?" Suzaku winced before laughing nervously. "Yeah, about that. The Nemesis." Breakdown walked onto the bridge, dragging the Lancelot along the ground as its back was magnetized to his right leg. Though Megatron was mildly surprised at seeing the Lancelot like this, he seemed more upset with what Breakdown had failed to retrieve. "Breakdown, you dare to return empty-handed?" "No, master." Breakdown turned around, dragging the Lancelot further along the ground, to reveal Arachnid was magnetized to his back, much like how RC was for Bulkhead. "Arachnid," Megatron greeted in minor surprise. "It has been some time." "Lord Megatron," Arachnid greeted back. "What can I say? It's good to be back." Divided they fall. "Hey everybody. Name's Gino. Nice to meet you." These were the words of the Knight of 3, Gino Weinberg, as he and 2 of his comrades, Anya Alstrheim, and Monica Kruszewski, all clad in their respective uniforms as Ashford students, with the excepting of Anya, who was in a uniform suited for the middle school group, as they stood in front of the class at Ashford Academy to introduce themselves. "My name is Monica, it's a pleasure to meet you all." Monica made a formal bow to the class after Gino's own introduction. "Anya," the younger girl said stoically as she seemed glued to her own personal handheld device. The teacher cleared his throat. Yes, well, as you've heard, these three will be joining our classes as of right now. Gino Weinberg, Anya Alstrheim, and Monica Kruszewski. It took a few moments for the introductions to sink in as one student quickly stood up from his seat. Wait, as in, the knights of the round. The knights of 3, 6, and 12. Yep, that's us. Gino confirmed with a wide grin. In that instant, nearly every student in the classroom was in an uproar as it seemed like they were meeting a group of famous celebrities. All sorts of questions were asked and it didn't seem like Gino or Monica seemed to mind, though Anya continued to type away at her cell phone, almost as if everything around her meant nothing to her. However, not every student felt so excited. Colin, Rai, and Shirley each remained sitting at their respective seats as they exchanged somewhat nervous glances with each other and shared a concerned look towards Lelouch, who could only take a deep sigh as he pressed his fingers against his forehead in minor frustration. 3 knights of the round. Can't say I didn't see this coming. Lelouch thought to himself. On one side, it would seem my father is actually getting rather anxious to send 3 of his top pilots to Japan to deal with us, meaning we're having a bigger impact than I initially thought. On the other, it means we'll be having more obstacles to contend with aside from the Decepticons. Well, at least things can't get any worse. Student council room. And, I spoke too soon. Lelouch did his best to hide his frustrated expressions while Colin, Rai, and Shirley by his side couldn't contain their own surprised looks as they saw their newest classmates in the student council room along with Millie, Rivals, Suzaku, and Nina, and even Nunali. Hey guys. Welcome to the club. Gino waved his hand in a friendly fashion. Madam President. Rai looked toward the blonde hoping for an explanation. Yeah, I probably should have told you guys. Millie had an apologetic smile on her face. But Gino, Monica, and Anya are joining us on the student council today. Scrap. Lelouch, Rai, and Colin all thought at the same time. Hey, you're Lelouch, right? Gino got straight up to Lelouch's face, much to his and his friend's surprise. Yes. What of it? You think maybe you can take me to your chess tournaments? Only the underground ones where you bet. Gino said. What? Lelouch exclaimed. I kinda told him how you used to gamble. Rivals chuckled somewhat nervously. Did you tell him that I quit a long time ago? Lelouch groaned in annoyance. Why'd you quit? It sounds like it was a lot of fun. Gino stated. Because I already got enough to buy a car and I didn't need anything else. Lelouch replied, his annoyance groaning even higher. Oh, you mean that sweet-looking yellow car with racing stripes? Gino asked, getting even more excited. Gotta say that car looks awesome. Mind if I take it for a spin? Yes, I do mind actually. Lelouch's eyes narrowed. Before Gino could even make an attempt to plead, Monica had already gotten up and pulled him away by his ear. Sorry about him. Monica smiled apologetically. He's easily excited. As Colin, Rai, and Shirley exchanged awkward looks, they proceeded to sit down at the table, all save for Lelouch as he looked toward a certain blonde. Madam President, can I have a word with you for a moment, please? Millie's expression became serious and concerning as she had a good idea what he wanted to talk about. Sure thing. She and Lelouch walked out into the empty hallway outside the classroom. Would you please explain to me why 3 knights of the round are joining us today? Lelouch asked, doing his best to maintain a calm facade. Millie winced. Lelouch, I know what you're thinking, but my parents and grandfather both insisted on it. I really had no choice in the matter. Guess it couldn't be helped then. But I still don't like it. Lelouch said. Well, did you know any of them before being sent to Japan? Personally? Millie asked. No, I didn't. Lelouch answered. So, it's not like they're going to recognize you or anything. Millie said to him. Lelouch, look, you know I wouldn't do anything that would put you or Nunali in any danger. I know that. I trust you, just wish I could say the same for your mother, no offense. Lelouch replied. None taken. Millie said. They both knew how desperate her mother was at trying to re-establish the Ashford family name. Trying to marry Millie off in a loveless marriage was only proof of that. It was actually a miracle that she hadn't sold out Lelouch or Nunali. Guess they had Millie's grandfather to thank for that. Ow. They both looked in surprise as they ran back into the room to see Gino hopping on his left foot while holding his right foot painfully. Oh, I'm sorry. Colin said in her sickly persona as she reached down to grab the books she dropped. What just happened? Lelouch asked. Gino tried to flirt with Colin, and she accidentally dropped her books on his foot. Rice said with a sly smirk, causing Lelouch to smirk as even Shirley did her best to hide her giggles. No harm done, Gino said as he set his foot back down. Man, first day here and it's already a ton of fun. Nonette would love this place. That caught Lelouch's attention, as well as everyone else's. Who? Rai asked. Nonette Enneagram, the Knight of 9. She's in Area 11 too. Monica answered, earning surprised expressions from everyone in the room, especially Lelouch. So how come we haven't seen her in class? Shirley asked. She's 29 years old, way too old to be in high school. Monica responded. But don't let that fool ya, she's a real looker. Gino said with a smirk, only to get elbowed in the side by Monica. The one person even Cornelia couldn't defeat. Lelouch remembered Nonette, though he only met her once or twice. Everything he heard from either Cornelia herself or Euphemia during his childhood at the Ares Villa as one of the best nightmare pilots out there, rivaling even his mother. If she was in Japan too, this was going to be a problem. Lelouch also happened to glance towards Nunnally, almost on instinct, and was surprised to see Anya sitting particularly close to her, with Arthur sitting comfortably on Nunnally's lap. Though it seems she and Nunnally were getting along all right, despite Anya still being glued to her cell phone, there was something about Anya that just made Lelouch on edge, and it wasn't just because how close she was sitting to his sister. Viceroy Palace. Hey Nellie, how have you been? Nonette walked into Cornelia's throne room with a friendly smile, the Viceroy herself sitting on her throne, with her younger sister in the throne next to her, as well as her own personal knights Darlton and Guilford by Cornelia's side, and even Dreadwing standing by Euphemia's side. Just fine, thank you. Cornelia said with a twitching eyebrow. Out of all the knights father could send, it just had to be her. Oh, and Euphy, good to see you again. Nonette waved to her. Lady Enneagram, it is nice to see you as well. Euphemia nodded, maintained her professional persona. Yeah, enough of the formalities, come over here and give me a hug. Nonette exclaimed with open arms, which was all Euphy needed to run over with a smile and exchange a heart-warming embrace with the Knight of 9. Dreadwing looked in minor surprise, as did Darlton and Guilford. Cornelia however only sighed, not out of annoyance, however. Though there were times where she found Nonette infuriating, she knew the woman was one of the few people she trusted around Euphy as they had become close as well during Nonette's and Cornelia's time in military school and would come over to their residences for frequent visits. I've missed you so much. Euphy stated as she continued to hug Nonette. I've missed you too, Euphy. You've been doing okay. Your big sister not giving you a hard time? Nonette asked almost playfully. You do realize I can hear you, correct? Cornelia remoned in annoyance. The two broke off their hug as Nonette addressed the remainder of the occupants. Sir Guilford, Sir Darlton, a pleasure. The pleasure is ours, Lady Enneagram. Guilford said as he and Darlton both bowed to her out of respect. She then looked up to the only Decepticon present. And you must be Dreadwing. That is correct. Dreadwing nodded his head. I am pleased to meet one of Britannia's most elite pilots. And I look forward to working alongside you in the battlefield. Nonette replied. Lady Enneagram, pardon me but how many knights besides yourself have arrived in Area 11? Guilford asked. Including me, there are 4 in total. Nonette answered. Gino, Anya, and Monica are all here. That took Darlton, Guilford, and even Cornelia and Euphemia by surprise. 4. Typically, only 1 or 2 knights of the round are sent to a military operation to quell the opposition. But if the Emperor sent over half of his current knights of the round to Area 11, it must show that he is taking the threat of the Autobots and Zero very seriously. That being said, I'd like to know everything you know about the Autobots and their Black Knight allies. Nonette said, getting serious. The more we know about them, the better we'll be able to prepare. I agree. Dreadwing acknowledged. We'll all benefit by sharing information with one another. Nonette nodded. In addition, this might be able to help me to find Prince Kaiserin. As much as I love Euphy and trust Cornelia, I can't bring them in on this. Euphy's sweet, but she's also naive, and I can't run the risk Cornelia would try to use Kaiserin for personal gain, considering he is half Japanese. But regardless, I will find him. No matter what. The Nemesis. Starscream, along with Thundercracker and Skywarp had walked onto the bridge, apparently in the middle of a conversation between Megatron and Arachnid. Is this true? Megatron questioned in surprise. Starscream never mentioned it. Arachnid asked. If he and his minions are up to their old tricks, I shall grind them into powder. Megatron clenched his fists for emphasis. Ahem. Starscream cleared his throat to get their attention. Starscream, and company. Megatron acknowledged. Yeah, we kinda heard you, so you guys wanna talk about us like we're not even here. Skywarp commented, not very amused. Lord Megatron, I mean no disrespect, but could you please explain to me why this deserter is back among our ranks? Thundercracker questioned, referring to Arachnid. Arachnid's talents will make her a valuable asset in our growing war against the Autobots and their Black Knight companions. Megatron answered. Skywarp scoffed slightly. When we go out without permission, we get a beatdown. But when she actually deserts us, she just gets a slap on the wrist. Then maybe you should aim for getting actual results. Arachnid teased, getting close to Skywarp's face, much to his frustration. Putting that matter aside, what was it I allegedly failed to mention, Lord Megatron? Starscream asked. The Harbinger. Megatron answered. That old piece of junk. What about it? Skywarp asked. Eons ago, a Decepticon transport ship crash-landed on this planet. Arachnid responded, bringing up an image of the Harbinger itself on the Nemesis main screen. Oh please, common knowledge. Starscream dismissed. My Seekers and I used the Harbinger's tracking signal to even get to Earth in the first place. Yeah, while you guys were sitting comfortably on the Nemesis, we actually had to fly our way here all the way from Cybertron. Skywarp said, almost sounding like he was complaining. Then I assume the three of you recovered the experimental weapon prototype the Harbinger had been transporting. Arachnid mused. That caught the three Seekers off guard. A weapon? We were never told about a weapon. Thundercracker said. I just thought it was transporting Energon. Skywarp said as well. Where is the crash site? Megatron questioned. Apparently they choose not to log it into the Nemesis database. Arachnid said, causally placing the blame on the three Seekers. You failed to record the coordinates of a Decepticon transport. Megatron was not pleased. Hey, don't look at us. Starscream was supposed to have done that. Skywarp pointed to his supposed commander, who gave a brief glare before turning back to Megatron. An oversight master, but I noted its exact location. Starscream revealed. It's actually located in neutral territory that neither Britannia nor any of the other major Earth superpowers have laid claim to. Thundercracker. No Energon there, no settlements, no human population, so, we can be in and out really quick. Very well, take Arachnid. Megatron instructed. But, I also want you to lead our newest additions, the Knights of the Round, as well. Starscream scoffed. Surely Master, we do not need any human pilots for a simple recovery mission. Given our enemy's track record, it is highly likely you will encounter the Autobots and the Black Knights during this mission. Megatron said. And I wish to see what Charles's hand-chosen pilots are capable of myself, if they are truly worthy to stand by our side. Consider it, a trial of sorts. Well then, let's go and meet our new partners. Arachnid mused as she causally walked past the Seekers, forcing them to step aside as she walked with a confident and arrogant stride, while flashing an arrogant smirk in Starscream's direction, causing him to scowl. The Ark. Knights of the Round. RC questioned as she, along with the rest of the Autobots met up with Lelouch, Colin, Shirley, and Rye, all in their respective Black Knight uniforms on the bridge of the Ark. Yes, 4 of them in total. Lelouch confirmed. 3 are at our school even. But they don't really seem like bad people. Shirley said. Could have fooled me. Colin commented, still frustrated over Gino's frequent attempts to woo her. But they could still be bad for us. Ironhide commented. From what we've heard, the Knights of the Round are pretty much the top pilots in the entire Empire. Wheeljack smirked slightly. About time these guys gave us a real challenge. Ever since we started our little war, we've only gotten a real fight from the cons. Wheeljack, you would be wise to take this seriously. Ratchet told the Wrecker. Lelouch, do you know what exactly we are dealing with here? Rye asked. To be honest, I'm almost completely in the dark. Lelouch confessed. The only one I have any real knowledge of is No Net Enneagram, the Knight of 9. She and Cornelia attended the same academy together, even surpassing her own skills as a nightmare pilot. I'd even say she rivaled my own mother, who was also a Knight of the Round at that time. May we know the names of the other knights that have arrived in Japan? Optimus asked. Gino Weinberg, Anya Alström, and Monica Kruszewski. Lelouch said. Fixit was able to put their names into the ARC's database as he brought up multiple public and service records, including photos of them and their nightmares, putting them up on the main screen of the bridge as he began to introduce each of them one by one. Gino Weinberg, also known as the Knight of Three. Age 16. His nightmare is known as the Riza 359 Tristian, a personalized 7th-generation nightmare. Like the Lancelot? Bumblebee asked. Apparently. Fixit confirmed as he brought the image of the Tristian up. It was a very colorful nightmare that was primarily white and blue, with hints of gold along the shoulders, chest, feet, and shins, with red eyes. In fact, all the nightmares the Knights of the Round possess are based off not only the Lancelot, but another 7th generation known as the Gawain that the Empire has been studying. Unfortunately, our information on that particular model is very scarce as we've only been able to access public records. Gotta admit, that's actually a pretty cool looking nightmare. Cliffjumper commented, earning looks of surprise and even tiny glares from the other Autobots and the 4 young Black Knights present. I mean, it's bad news for us since it's with the bad guys, but it still looks pretty cool. And the others? Ratchet asked the Orange Mini-Con. Next up, Fixit brought up the images of Anya as well as her own nightmare. Anya Alström, the Knight of 6. Age 14. Her personal nightmare is known as the RZA-6DG Mordred, also a 7th generation unit. She's 14 years old. Shirley almost exclaimed out of shock. She's the same age as Nunnally. How in the name of Primus did a kid end up as a Knight of the Round? Ironhide sounded quite disgusted that Britannia would let someone so young pilot a nightmare like that. And just look at that nightmare of hers. Bulkhead commented upon seeing the Mordred. It seemed to be just as bulky as Bulkhead himself, if only slightly less. It was primarily a dark magenta color with hints of white and gold, and 2 large shoulder pieces. Not much is known about Anya's time before being a Knight of the Round. Fixit continued. But she is widely feared among the other soldiers. Although, her records indicate she seems to suffer from a rare mental disorder that seems similar to a form of short-term memory loss. And the other two? Ratchet asked. Next is Nonette Enneagram, the Knight of 9. Fixit brought up her profile on the bridge's main screen, as well as images of her nightmare. Age 29. Her unit is the 7th generation RPI-29 Galician. Is it just me or is that thing basically a blue Lancelot? Cliffjumper asked. Yeah, it's almost like a twin. RC seemed to agree as the Galician looked almost identical to the Lancelot, only instead of it being white and gold, it was white and blue, with a curved horn-like ornament on its forehead. Actually, according to these records, the unit was originally called the Lancelot Club. It was a prototype of the unit that Suzaku is currently piloting. Fixit said. But it was renamed upon Nonette claiming it. Shirley winced slightly as she looked down at the mention of her classmate's name, with Colin, Rye, and especially Lelouch offering her sympathetic expressions. Shortly after her joining the organization, they already told her about Suzaku not only in the Britannian military as the Lancelot's pilot but also being involved with the Decepticons. As expected, she did not take the news very well, though her friends were able to calm her down. It still left her in a great state of worry, as she silently prayed Suzaku would be alright. And, the final one? Lelouch asked, getting back on point. Fixit brought up the photographs of the last night in her own nightmare. Monica Kruszewski, the Knight of 12. Age 17. Her unit is the RZX-12TM1 Florence. Apparently, she also serves as the leader to the Emperor's Royal Guard. Though Lelouch's eyes narrowed at that particular description, he didn't let it bother him so much as they all looked at her own nightmare. It was mostly white with hints of gold along the head and shoulders, green arm blades along its arms, and black shoulders. They're all so young, Optimus noted in a grave tone. Not young enough for that scumbag of an emperor to make them his personal entourage. Colin stated with a hint of venom in her voice. And most of them are our classmates. Rice said in a worried tone. I don't think we have cause for concern with that. Lelouch said logically. Like I said, Nonette was the only one I actually knew before my exile, and even then we only met on the rarest of circumstances, so I don't think she'd recognize me or my sister. And since I've never met the others before, we should be safe there. That covers you, but what about the rest of us? RC asked. Yeah, from what we've heard, these guys aren't going to be like any of the other Britannians we fought. Cliffjumper added. Hey, the fact that old guy sent 4 of his top soldiers against us shows how scared he is. Wheeljack smirked. Even Lelouch had to smirk at that. The very idea that he made his father scared brought a great deal of satisfaction. I feel it is best we approach the Knights of Round with caution. Optimus explained. Until we have full knowledge of their skills and their nightmares' abilities, it may be best to leave them to the Autobots and only our top Black Knight pilots. So, just me and Colin then. Rai assumed. Yes, and even then, you should still watch yourselves. Optimus advised. Got it. Colin nodded. I'll contact Kyoto and let them know about this new development. Lelouch said as he stood up from his seat. I'll let the other Black Knights know so they know to be careful. Ironhide added. Very well, until then, we remain low until I say otherwise. Optimus instructed all his soldiers, including Lelouch, as they all nodded in understanding. The Knights of the Round were not to be taken lightly, especially if they would be working alongside the Decepticons. Camelot Division. The 4 nightmares belonging to the Knights of the Round were all docked alongside the Lancelot, the Mordred, the Tristian, the Galician, and the Florence were all there, with a certain man-child scientist rubbing his hands anxiously. Oh, how I've waited for this. Lloyd said excitedly. I get a chance to work with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 nightmares piloted by the Knights of the Round. Add the Lancelot and that's 5 total. Oh, this has gotta be the best day of my life. Is he always like this? Monica asked Cecile. You have no idea. The older woman sighed in exhaustion. Well, at least he's better company than Bradley. Monica thought. Suzaku meanwhile stood on a catwalk just above the exchange in silent thought. It felt a bit overwhelming to know he'd likely be with at least one of the 4 Knights of the Round every day, not including his time at school. At first, he was a bit nervous for Lelouch and Nunnally's Sake, but he and Millie already told him that they wouldn't recognize him, so their identities were safe. At the same time, this could also serve as a good opportunity. If he could convince some of the Knights of the Round to change Britannia's ways, then maybe his goal could become a reality and all this fighting could come to an end. You must be Suzaku Kururugi. He looked to his right in surprise to see Nonette walking up to him with Anya by his side. I am. Lady Enneagram. Suzaku stood up straight. Yes, I am aware of who you are. I was told you were coming by your comrades at school. A pleasure to see you again, Lady Alstrime. Yes, you as well. Anya said emotionlessly. Nonette actually giggled a bit. Suzaku, there's no need to be so formal with us. I can assure you, I'm not a racist, neither are my collages, well at least not those present with us. But, seeing how we're going to be working together for the foreseeable future, I would like you to feel more relaxed around us. You don't have to act like we're better than you or anything. Promise. She handed Suzaku a hand to shake. This took the young honorary Britannian by surprise. A Knight of the Round, a Britannian soldier handpicked by the Emperor himself was offering her hand to shake, as an equal. Maybe Suzaku's goal wasn't that far off after all. With a smile, he shook her hand. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you as well. So, this is where Suzaku's been hanging out, huh? Gino asked, walking up to Lloyd before looking to the certain nightmare. And that's the infamous Lancelot. I'm honored to have my prized invention gain the recognition of a Knight of the Round. Lloyd said in obvious sarcasm, bearing no respect to Gino's title, but not showing any disrespect either. Yeah, it does look really cool. Not like those lame Sutherlands and Gloucesters. There's no taste to them. Gino commented. Aha, you have good taste. Lloyd could already tell he would get along with Gino quite well. Yeah, but enough about nightmares. When are we gonna meet the Decepticons and fight those Autobot guys? That sounds really cool, Gino said in an excited childlike tone. Plus, I hear the Black Knights got some super cool nightmares of their own. Sooner than you think, Knight. This earned the attention of the 4 Knights of the Round, as well as Suzaku, Lloyd, and Cecile as they turned to see a certain quartet of Decepticons walk in. Though the 4 Knights could look in absolute surprise, or amazement in Gino's case as he had a wide grin, Even Anya stopped typing as her mouth hung open slightly and her eyes slightly wavered. Suzaku stood straight once he saw Starscream, along with Thundercracker and Skywarp as they walked into the bay, however. Suzaku's pupils shrunk once he saw the smirking Arachnid with them. She noticed his presence as well. "Hello Suzaku, did you miss me?" Arachnid. Suzaku was about to run to his Lancelot until he heard Starscream call him. "Stand down Kururugi," the Decepticon Fist Lieutenant exclaimed. "Arachnid is with us." "What? You can't be serious," Suzaku shouted. "We're very serious," Thundercracker stated. Nonette placed a hand on Suzaku's shoulder. "I'm assuming you two know each other?" she asked, referring to him and Arachnid. "She massacred countless innocent people in the ghettos," Suzaku exclaimed. "She skinned them alive, dismembered them, and even attacked Britannian soldiers." Though this took many by surprise, Lloyd still had an intrigued smile on his face. "Aha, so you're the boogeyman of the ghettos, or bogey woman in your case. I have to say you're certainly among the most unique Transformers, what with your spider-like abilities." Arachnid leaned down close to Lloyd. "And you must be Lloyd Asplund, a Britannian Earl who has a certain habit of dismembering machinery." "I wouldn't quite say that, but I do like to tinker," Lloyd said. "Tell me, have you ever tinkered with a human?" Arachnid mused. "I've always taken a personal enjoyment from ripping people limb from limb. You could probably replace them with cyborg appendages if you want. I might even give a personal demonstration." Lloyd gulped as he nervously took a few steps back. "I'll have to take a pass on that." Cecile also looked more than a little nervous as Monica stepped almost protectively in front of her as even Gino's smile faded at the sight of Arachnid's demeanor. She reminded them both of a certain bloodthirsty, vampiric, colleague of theirs whom neither of them really liked. Arachnid looked at the humans she did not recognize. "So, these are the mighty knights of the round." She glanced at their nightmares. "And these are your own personal nightmares." I've seen better." She wasn't all that impressed even as she walked toward the Lancelot. "At the very least they have variety, much like this one." She purposely dragged her claws along the chest of the Lancelot, causing a screeching metal sound that made even Gino wince and Nonette cover her ears slightly. Even Lloyd's eyebrow twitched slightly at the sight of his precious Lancelot openly defiled. "Why are you here, Arachnid?" Suzaku glared. "Isn't it obvious, Suzaku?" Arachnid asked upon walking close towards him as he was still on the catwalk. "We're on the same side now. I've rejoined the Decepticons." "Thought you weren't interested." His eyes narrowed even further. "Changed my mind." She shrugged. "Listen, you wanna blame someone for that. How about a certain Autobot and her Black Knight pet who destroyed my ship and skinned my knee? Especially that pilot in the Red Nightmare that gave me this." Arachnid pointed to a vertical scar underneath her right eye when the Gurren cut her with its knife. "I mean to pay them back in kind, both of them. That gives us a common enemy, doesn't it?" Suzaku didn't offer any response but continued to glare. The tension between these two was so thick that it would take a nightmare MVS just to cut it. However, it was indeed broken by Gino, who coughed loudly. "So, what's going on? You guys here for a reason?" "Yes, we have a mission for the present Knights of the Round," Starscream said, getting everyone's attention. "Thundercracker, Skywarp, Arachnid and myself are departing for the land you call Australia. The four of you knights will accompany us. It is neutral territory, so there is no need to worry of any diplomacy. Viceroy Cornelia will be joining us upon her insistence," Thundercracker added. "Ooh, Australia." Gino seemed interested. "The only nation not with any superpower. Heard it's got nice beaches." "Work first Gino, play later," Monica told him. "What's the mission, exactly?" Nonette asked. "To locate an old Cybertronian ship and bring back something that it's been carrying," Skywarp said. "Ooh, more Cybertronian technology. Goody." Lloyd seemed quite excited. "I really missed out on that whole polarity gauntlet thing. What are we bringing back, exactly?" Suzaku asked in a suspicious tone. "That information is need to know, and right now, you don't," Arachnid replied. "Especially you, considering you're not joining us, Suzaku." "What?" Suzaku exclaimed as he and everyone else looked in surprise. "Is there a reason you don't want Suzaku to come?" Cecile questioned. "Given his track record against the Autobots and the Black Knights, as well as his inability to kill his enemies, he may be more of a liability than an asset." Starscream sneered, earning a glare from Suzaku. So, the Black Knights and the Autobots are gonna show up? Gino asked in an excited and hopeful tone. We have no confirmation, but it is likely. Thundercracker said. And it'll give us a chance to see what the Knights of the Round can do against the Autobots. Makes sense. Anya seemed alright with it, being as emotionless as ever. So, get in your nightmares you so-called knights, we're moving out. Starscream ordered. If you say so. Nonette narrowed her eyes as she and Anya walked off the catwalk to join Gino and Monica in readying their respective nightmares. Skywarp noticed the look of frustration on Suzaku's face. Kid, you got a problem with it, take it up with the big boss. It was his decision, not ours. Believe me, I will. Suzaku thought to himself as he was already on his way out the door, but not before catching one final look at Arachnid, who merely smirked in his direction, causing him to scowl even further as he left. Ogi's residence. Konami Ogi walked back into his house when he heard a familiar voice call to him. Welcome back. Thanks. Ogi stuttered a bit, still not used to having a Britannian pureblood in his house, even if she did have amnesia. After Zero and Optimus gave Ogi permission to watch over her, she was given some anesthetics so she would fall asleep as they transported her out of the Ark and to Ogi's place. It seemed that she has for the most part recovered physically, though she did still suffer from permanent scars and lacerations on her back. Good timing, the meal's almost ready. The amnesiac Valletta returned to her work at the pot. Meal? Ogi asked. You mean, did you go out shopping somewhere? He asked with concern. If someone recognized her it could be bad news. No, I just used what you had around. She replied. Some people here are afraid of Britannians, plus I've heard all these things about giant robots everywhere so. Well, I wouldn't say they're everywhere, but yeah, probably best to stay indoors for now. Ogi commented. So, have you been able to remember anything yet? Sorry, nothing at all, yet. Her smile faded slightly. That's okay. Ogi said as he went into his room and looked at the recordings from the cameras he hid all over his house, via his computer. Though he wasn't the kind of person to take advantage of someone with amnesia, he wasn't naive enough to think she might try and trick him. So far, the recordings showed that she hadn't done anything suspicious. Don't push it, you're still healing. He said to her. It's alright if it takes time to remember. That of course left a bit of a question in Ogi's head. If and when she did regain her memories, what was he going to do with her? Okay, it's ready. She called to him. I sure hope you like it. Despite the odd situation he was facing, Ogi couldn't help but smile a bit. Australia. The outback of the independent nation seemed more or less a desert with only wildlife serving as its inhabitants, rather than people, with no human civilization in sight. Therefore, nobody would notice the ground bridge portal opening up as Starscream, Arachnid, Thundercracker, and Skywarp walk out, with Cornelius Gloucester, as well as the 4 Knights of the Round and their respective nightmares roll out. I don't feel so good. Gino commented, holding his stomach. Well, sucks to be a fleshy then. Skywarp smirked. Are you here to bicker or are you here to guide? Arachnid questioned to the group. I will reveal the exact location of the Harbinger when you tell me exactly what we're looking for. Starscream stated. Just like I told Suzaku, that information is need to know, and you don't right now, none of you do in fact. Arachnid said, resulting in glares from nearly everyone present. Watch your tongue, Decepticon. Cornelia glared. I am Second Princess Cornelia Lee Britannia, one of the top pilots in the Empire, and I will not be treated like a lowly grunt. If you're such a mighty warrior, how come you're not a Knight of the Round? Arachnid taunted. There's actually a rule that says members of the royal family cannot also become a Knight of the Round. Anya commented from within her massive Mordred. Oh, Thundercracker mused. If I recall, wasn't one of the Emperor's consorts also a Knight of the Round? What is her name again? Oh right, Marianne V. Britannia. She was the Knight of 2 if I recall. Yeah, well, the Emperor changed it after she died. Gino pointed out. Guess that means the supposed Goddess of Victory isn't really good enough. Skywarp mocked, resulting in Cornelia growling. Goddess of Victory. Where'd you earn that title? Arachnid taunted as well. Superiority complex much. Suddenly, Cornelius Gloucester had pointed its lance right at Arachnid's face. Do not test me, Arachnid. I've laid waste to entire legions of enemies. I brought entire nations to their knees for the sake of the Empire. I will not be mocked by the likes of you. You snuffed out entire nations. Arachnid mused with a faint surprise and amazement. Without even a hint of mercy. Cornelia added, "Oh. Even Optimus showed you mercy during your little duel in Saitama." Arachnid reminded Cornelia, causing her to grit her teeth even more. "In fact, if I recall correctly, you haven't had one single victory since coming to Japan, haven't you? Though you're no winner, you have still left a great deal of destruction in your wake, including your own precious Glaston Knights. So, I think a more appropriate tile for you would be the Goddess of Carcasses rotting in the mud." "Ooh, burn," Skywarp mocked, and even Gino chuckled a bit as Starscream smirked, while Nonette and Monica glared at the Spider-Woman. "I've heard enough." Cornelia was ready to shoot Arachnid where she stood, but Nonette's Galatian had come in between them to stop a fight from breaking out. "Stop it. We are not enemies," Nonette said in a very stern tone. "Cornelia, you need to take it easy, don't let your temper get out of control. And Arachnid, you would do well not to push any of our buttons or else there will be trouble." This seemed to get both of them to back down. Though Cornelia wouldn't admit it, Nonette was one of the few people she regarded as something of a senior and knew better than to question her when she was serious. Arachnid stood down as well, though she was annoyed by the Knight of Nine's tone. Ahem. Thundercracker cleared his throat. "The mission." Starscream got back on track. "The wreckage lies just beneath where we stand. I will need to find a point of entry." Before anyone could find said point of entry, Arachnid's lower body converted into a drill as she began to dig straight down, much to everyone's surprise. "Whoa, she can dig underground," Gino voiced in clear amazement. "Some spiders are known for dwelling underground," Anya pointed out. "Show off," Starscream muttered before turning to everyone else. "Arachnid and I will retrieve the item we seek, the rest of you will wait out here and stand guard in case the enemy arrives." "Makes sense." Monica nodded. "Sure thing." Skywarp seemed to agree. Before Starscream could even proceed down the hole himself, however, Cornelia's Gloucester rolled in front of him. "I'm coming as well." "I do not recall giving you permission to do so." Starscream glared. "If I recall correctly, Megatron said you and I bear equal rank. So, I don't need your permission," Cornelia commented as she drove her nightmare into the hole, splitting its legs like a split kick as she used the wheels on her mech's feet to slow her descent. Starscream merely sighed in annoyance as he proceeded to climb down himself. Arachnid and Cornelia proceeded down the halls of the ruined Decepticon vessel, with Starscream casually walking behind them. As Arachnid used her spider legs to crawl on the ceiling, Cornelia's own nightmare's headlights had been turned on to provide some form of illumination as she herself looked around. "So, this is a Cybertronian vessel. I expected more," she thought to herself in disappointment. "Suit yourselves. I conducted a thorough search of this husk years ago," Starscream said, though he looked in surprise to see Arachnid activating an old console. "What are you doing?" "Accessing the cargo manifest," Arachnid answered. "Or didn't you think to do that during your thorough search?" she mocked. "Idiot." Starscream glared. The ship's systems hadn't been activated for eons. The Autobots and the Black Knights could detect its energy signature. "Let them come," Cornelia stated. "I'm not afraid to fight, unlike you it would seem," she said to Starscream. Before they could even begin an argument, Arachnid found what they were looking for. "Ah, here it is, Section 23. The Ark." Just as Starscream predicted, the Autobots were able to detect the active energy signature as both Ratchet and Fix-It noticed the new signal on the bridge's main console. "Optimus, Lelouch, our scanners have detected a Decepticon energy profile." Ratchet got both their attention. "But it's ancient. The past has a way of catching up with the present, Ratchet," Optimus commented. "Should I contact the other Black Knights?" Fix-It asked. "Negative," Lelouch countered. "All the Autobots are present, along with Ryan Collin. If this is another Decepticon weapon, we'll need to hurry, and we'll need the best for this mission." Australia. Thundercracker sat casually on a large rock, with Skywarp pacing around the area. At the same time, the Tristian, Mordred, Florence, and Galatian nightmares all stood straight while the pilots inside casually waited for something to happen. Gino gave a loud enough yawn that it echoed from his nightmare's speakers. "Man, I am bored." That makes 2 of us. Skywarp commented. What did you expect? Is playing volleyball to pass the time or something? Thundercracker questioned in obvious sarcasm. I just want something to do is all. Gino said. I hate doing nothing. We have our orders to wait. Monica said. So, we'll wait. You think the Autobots and Black Knights are gonna show up? I really wanna fight them. Gino hoped. Given the record number of Autobot Black Knight interference in military operations, the odds seem rather likely. Anya said as she was again glued to her cell phone, even inside her nightmare. And we should take them seriously. Nonette said. They've completely demolished both the Purebloods and the Glaston Knights. People are taking notice all over the world, and we're even seeing rises in resistances and rebellion in other areas as well, not just Area 11. Skywarp snickered. Sucks to be you guys. However, before that could erupt into an argument, a ground bridge portal opened up and the Autobots all ran out, guns blazing, along with the Gurren Mk2, the Gekka pre-production, and even Zero's own personal Barai. The surprise and rapid energon blasts forced the Knights of the Round and Seekers to scatter to avoid being hit. Autobots. And the Black Knights. Thundercracker exclaimed. About damn time. Now we're talking. Gino exclaimed with joy. Optimus, Bumblebee, and RC with me. Zero ordered as he added to the firefight with his Barai's riffle. Everyone else take care of the enemy here. Zero rolled his Barai as Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and RC all transformed into their respective vehicle modes and followed him closer to the signal they were detecting. So that's Zero, huh? I got M. Gino rolled his Tristian in pursuit, only for the Nightmare to get derailed and knocked to the side by Cliffjumper in his vehicle mode before he transformed and blocked his path. Sorry Night Boy, you gotta go through me first. Cliffjumper stated with a grin. Gino's own grin hadn't faded in the least. If you say so, Mr. Autobot. He rolled his Tristian straight at Cliffjumper as the two clashed. Thundercracker hovered in the air along with Skywarp as they opened fire with energon blasts at Ironhide and Wheeljack, but the two were quick to maneuver around their blasts as Ironhide retaliated with blasts from his own cannon, forcing the two to separate while Wheeljack jumped as Ironhide kept them distracted. The Wrecker was able to grab onto Skywarp's feet and pull him out of the air to slam him on the ground. This distracted Thundercracker long enough for Ironhide to blast him right out of the sky and crash hard on the ground. Bulkhead meanwhile charged forward with his mace straight at the Mordred. However, the bulky Nightmare was actually able to lift both its hands and quickly catch Bulkhead's weapon, much to his own surprise. And even more so as the massive shoulder armaments opened up and fired two powerful blasts that actually sent Bulkhead reeling back across the ground. Two shoulder-mounted Varus weapons. Anya observed. Powerful, yet apparently not deadly enough for an Autobot. Bulkhead was able to push himself back on his feet as he rubbed some spilled energon from his mouth. Hard to believe a kid's piloting that thing. She'd actually make a pretty decent wrecker. Bulkhead quickly brought both his energon blasters up just as the Mordred fired its Varus shoulder weapons again, right as Bulkhead blasted two powerful energon blasts. They collided and created a powerful explosion that seemed to rock the whole area. Anya's eyes widened slightly as she saw Bulkhead quickly run through the smoke to leap and tackle the Mordred to the ground. Hate to do this to ya kid, but I'm gonna have to knock you out for a while. Bulkhead lifted his mace weapon in an attempt to smash the Nightmare's head and render it immobile, while not killing Anya inside. However, she shot both the Mordred's fists up into Bulkhead's face and knocked him up slightly before the Mordred let loose a series of proximity missiles, forcing Bulkhead to cover himself as the blasts knocked him back slightly, though he remained on his feet. Meanwhile, the Gekka charged at the Galashan and clashed its rotating blade katana against the opposing MVS blade. They locked for a moment before Rai lashed out his Gekka's Surger Claw, only for the Galashan to jump into the air and flip over to land behind the blue Gekka and lash out an MVS strike, only for Rai to instinctively turn his Nightmare round and block the strike with an activated Surger Claw. The opposing energy actually melted the sword, forcing Nonette to roll her Nightmare back as it drew its own Varus rifle to open fire, which Rai blocked again using an activated Surger Claw that actually kept the blast back. Though Rai struggled to keep it back, he moved aside to let the blast past him where it obliterated a large mound of the ground. Can't believe I'm actually going toe-to-toe with a Knight of the Round. He smiled almost humbly. Guess all that experience fighting Decepticons has paid off. He shot his Gekka forward, slashing with both his katana and surger claw, forcing Nonet on the defensive. The Knight of Nine smirked herself. I can see it's not just the Autobots that are a threat. The Black Knights got plenty of talent of their own. Whoever this pilot is, he's good. Meanwhile, Colin roared as she shot her Gurren straight at the incoming Florence. She lashed out her Radiant Wave Surger Claw, only for Monica to block it with an X formation of her Florence's retractable MVS shoulder blades. They struggled against each other until Monica forced her Nightmare forward, forcing Colin back as she brought out her Gurren's knife which she lashed out, but the Florence ducked and tried to sweep its feet, only for the Gurren to jump over and above and lash out with her Surger Claw again. But the Florence batted it away before trying to move her Nightmare back and fire a pair of waist-mounted slash Harkins, only for Colin to slash at one with her knife and barely dodge the second. At the same time, Cliffjumper opened fire with his Energon blasts at the incoming Tristian, but Gino proved fast enough in his Nightmare to dodge each of the blasts as the Tristian drew both its MVS blades and slashed at Cliffjumper, who ducked and dodged each swipe before sweeping his feet to knock the Tristian down. He quickly aimed his Energon blaster right to the Tristian's face, but Gino quickly sliced upward with the right MVS to knock the red Autobot back, allowing the Tristian to stand up on its feet. Gotta say, that's the first time somebody's knocked me off my feet before. Gino commented with a grin. Fighting you Autobots is an absolute blast. He fired a slash Harkin from his Nightmare's right arm, which Cliffjumper was able to dodge and avoid. Same goes for you. Cliffjumper grinned as well. Most of the Britannians have been fighting act like something crawled up their tailpipe and died. He charged directly at the Tristian, who tried to slash downward with its MVS blades, only for Cliff to catch the Nightmare by its arms. About time someone knows how to have some fun around here. He headbutted the Tristian to disorient its pilot before grabbing it by its right arm and hauling it over his shoulder for a throw. Tell me about it, Gino commented as he flipped his Nightmare to land on its feet. Hanging around with a bunch of stiffs is kinda lame. Even a few of my pals in the Knights of the Round are hard to talk to. Cliffjumper maintained his smirk as he clashed with the Tristian once more. Though it seemed like this Gino was actually a pretty decent guy, he still knew he had to take him down. But that didn't mean he couldn't have some fun with him. At the same time, Arachnid proceeded through the tunnels of the Harbinger with Starscream and Cornelia's Gloucester right behind her, the trio apparently oblivious to the battle occurring outside. She turned a corner. Section 23 should be right about here. She came to a stop as the only thing in front of her was a dead end of solid rock. The ship just ends. It must have broken in half during the crash. Starscream scoffed. Or in the air. If you performed actual research, you would have learned that an Autobot battalion shot the Harbinger out of the sky. You knew this was only part of the ship. Cornelia questioned, clearly unamused by Starscream's lack of communication. How far away is the other half? Arachnid demanded. I'm afraid that information is, need to know. Starscream mocked to both of them. Both Cornelia and Arachnid growled, but not even the former could contain a surprised expression as the latter shot out some of her webbing to ensnare Starscream and knock him onto the ground. What are you? You're trying to make me look like a fool before Megatron. Arachnid accused. Have me return empty-handed while you locate the weapon yourself. How dare you accuse me? Starscream exclaimed. You're nothing but a scavenger. An opportunist. Aren't you one to talk? Arachnid commented as she leaned closer towards Starscream in a predatory fashion. Cornelia said nothing as she only observed with a smirk, finding it quite amusing to see the Decepticons bicker amongst themselves, particularly the two that drove her up the wall the most. Perhaps. But I've changed, Starscream said in a calming tone. Seen the error of my ways. I live to serve Megatron now. You won't live to serve anyone if you don't tell me where to find the rest of this ship. Now, Arachnid demanded. Starscream sighed in annoyance. 20 kilometers north of here through a stone arch. Thank you. Arachnid stood back up. Good, now we can. Before Cornelia however could make any movements, her Gloucester was suddenly webbed to the walls of the ship. Arachnid wasted no time in using her spider legs to sever the hands and feet of the Nightmare and even a slice at the Gloucester's neck to sever its communications. What is the meaning of this? Cornelia exclaimed. Even Starscream was mildly surprised. You know Cornelia, there has been something I've been meaning to ask you. Arachnid mused. The motto of Britannia is, survival of the fittest, right? As in, the strong survive and the weak die, correct? What of it? Cornelia narrowed her eyes. So, then I really must ask, why is little Euphemia still around? Arachnid asked with an amused smirk. What? Cornelia questioned. I did a little research on the Britannian royal family, seeing how we're supposed to be working together and all. Arachnid began. Typically, anyone who isn't a warrior like yourself is usually a strategist, or a really good politician. But as it turns out, little Euphemia doesn't fall under any of those categories. So, it makes me wonder why you're even keeping her around. Or, I believe a better question is, why is dead old daddy keeping her around? It's none of your damn business. Cornelia glared at the spider-con that so much as mentioned her younger sister's name. If she's as weak as I've heard, why hasn't your precious emperor thrown her to the curb? Arachnid taunted. After all, it's not the first time he's done it. What were their names again? Oh right, Lelouch and Nunnally. Cornelia's eyes widened as she didn't even come up with a response as Arachnid continued. Their mommy died, so their father threw them to the hounds and killed them. Isn't that right? No, the 11s were responsible for their deaths. I don't think so, Arachnid countered. The truth is, their lives weren't in danger until Japan was invaded. And who was it that invaded Japan again? Oh right, it was you. It was Britannia. Seeing how Charles had no qualms over killing his own son and daughter like that, it makes me wonder why he hasn't done the same to useless Yuffie. If you so much as lay a finger on her, Cornelia gritted her teeth so much, it was a wonder they didn't crack. I'm not saying I would do anything. Arachnid replied. I'm only asking what you would do if Daddy tried to kill Yuffie like how he killed Lelouch and Nunnally. Would you protect her and betray the Empire? Or would you kill her yourself to further cement your position as the pride of Britannia? Shut your mouth. Cornelia tried to move her nightmare, but without its land spinners on its feet, it was pretty much immobile. Ahem. Starscream got Arachnid's attention. As entertaining as this is, we do have a mission to accomplish. So, release me. Arachnid proceeded to walk away before turning back to the immobilized pair. When I have the weapon in hand. She smirked. That is, if I can find my way back without my guide. Oh, and Cornelia, seeing how your nightmare malfunctioned and you found yourself stranded on this foreign land, I'll be sure to take real good care of little Yuffie in your stead. Her eyes shook with a blind rage as Cornelia tried to personally kick open her cockpit, but with the back of it stuck against the wall, it was almost impossible, so she tried to cut her way out with her sword. This is not funny, Arachnid. Starscream called to her as she walked away. Come back here right now and cut me loose. Arachnid, that is an order. I am your commanding officer. She chuckled as she turned the corner, only to gasp as she spotted Optimus, RC, Bumblebee, and Zero's Barai, who in turn spotted her as well. Arachnid, RC exclaimed. Surrender. Optimus ordered. Arachnid growled as she produced her spider legs and ran back the way she came with the Autobot trio and Zero in close pursuit. Arachnid, you traitor. Starscream exclaimed as she scurried over him and proceeded to drill herself back to the surface through the rock wall on the other side, leaving him, as well as Cornelia's Gloucester with Optimus, Bumblebee, and Zero as RC proceeded to climb through the tunnel in pursuit of her nemesis. RC. Wait. Optimus tried to call to her. Zero immediately contacted the others. All units. RC is in pursuit of Arachnid. Provide assistance immediately. I'm on my way. Colin responded. Hey Zero. Bumblebee got his attention as the Autobot scout pried the webbed and immobile Gloucester from the wall and pulled open its cockpit to pull out Cornelia in his own hand. Look who's here. Lelouch's eyes widened as he saw his struggling sister in Bumblebee's grip. Cornelia. RC had made it to the surface, not far from the rest of the fighting as she heard noises and energon fire in the distance. But that wasn't her concern right now. She aimed her energon blaster but had seen her enemy had vanished. However, the ground under her exploded outward, knocking RC back as she turned to see Arachnid greeting her. RC. I didn't peg you for re-siding with the Decepticons. RC commented as she charged her nemesis. A temporary arrangement, RC. You know I prefer working alone. Arachnid replied as she dodged a punch and a flying kick from RC, only for Arachnid to grab RC's leg with her spider legs and slam her to the ground before throwing her away. But RC flipped mid-air and landed on her feet before charging at Arachnid with her arm blades. However, as RC slashed her blade, Arachnid dodged it and placed RC in a neck lock. Speaking of, add any more deceased partners to your list. However, Arachnid was sent flying back with a kick to her back, forcing her to let go of RC. As Arachnid got back up, she saw her assailant was none other than the Gurren. "Here's one, spider bitch," Colin exclaimed with a glare. Arachnid glared slightly. "As much as I'd love to have another play date with you, Colin, I'm afraid I don't quite have the time." She transformed into her helicopter mode and proceeded to fly away with RC and the Gurren in close pursuit, the former trying to shoot her down. Arachnid flew over the area where the remaining Seekers and the 4 Knights of the Round were duking it out with the Autobots as well as the single Gekka pre-production. "Soundwave, I need a ground bridge. 20 kilometers north of my current position." She transformed and landed on the ground right as a ground bridge portal opened up. "Come on everyone. Time to go." "Where's Cornelia?" Nonet exclaimed. "Forget her, let's just go." Skywarp stated as he ran to grab the Galician by its arm and pull it into the ground bridge as Skywarp, the Tristian, Mordred, and Florence all followed them, Thundercracker, and Arachnid into the ground bridge, which deactivated as the portal closed right as RC and the Gurren regrouped with their comrades. "Did we just send the Knights of the Round running?" Rai asked. "Awesome." "Doubt it." Ironhide shook his head. "They probably got what they needed." "Too bad, that was actually kinda fun." Cliffjumper said. "I hear ya, Cliff. About time Britannia gave us a real challenge." Wheeljack shared a fist bump with the red Autobot. Colin shook her head with a smirk as she spared a glance in RC's direction. "Hey, you okay RC?" "No, not until I make her pay." RC snarled. The redhead girl looked with concern. "RC, you know that I would personally love to put that bitch in her place, we can't let our emotions cloud our judgment." "Right. That's kinda ironic coming from you," Cliffjumper said, resulting in a short glare from Colin, which he didn't notice as it was inside her nightmare, but he turned to RC with his own serious expression. "But she's right. Revenge is not going to bring back who we lost, you know that." RC offered no response, but simply looked away. "Move it." They all turned their attention to see Bumblebee, Optimus, and Zero in his beret personally escorting not only Starscream, but even Cornelia, who still remained in Bumblebee's grip. "No need to use force," Starscream stated, still ensnared in Arachnid's webbing, as he was forced to his knees. Starscream and Bulkhead looked in surprise to see the Britannian princess in Bumblebee's hand. "Is that Cornelia?" "No way. We actually captured Cornelia," Rai exclaimed as even Colin was stunned. Cornelia growled at the enemy. "If you think I've accepted this, you really don't have a choice, considering your current predicament," Zero reminded, as Lelouch himself couldn't contain his own smirk from within his nightmare. He finally did it. He finally captured Cornelia. Now he can get answers from her. "I'll tell you anything you want to know," Starscream said to the Autobots and Black Knights around him. "Is that right? And what do you want in return, Starscream?" Ironhide glared, knowing just how deceptive their prisoner was. "I want to be on your side," Starscream revealed. This caught Rai and Colin by surprise as most of the other Autobots narrowed their eyes untrustingly towards Starscream, though Optimus maintained a serious expression as did Lelouch. "On our side," Bulkhead laughed. "Yeah right. And I've been lobbying with the Fallen. You wouldn't betray the Decepticons," Zero told him. "Wouldn't I?" Starscream questioned. "What have they done for me lately besides humiliate me, spy on me, demote me? Do you know how many times Megatron tried to extinguish my spark in cold blood? Only to have him now replace me with that traitorous wretch Arachnid. She abandoned me, even my own Seekers. They left me for scrap. So why not rat them out?" While the others eyed the Seeker with suspicion, Wheeljack looked towards Cornelia. "What about you, Princess? Your little Knights of the Round abandoned you too. I think that's cause for some payback, right? If you think for one moment I would betray Britannia, you are sorely mistaken, Autobot," Cornelia exclaimed. "Unlike this backstabbing snake, my loyalty will never shake." Lelouch narrowed his eyes but offered no response. "Zero, what do you think?" Colin asked from her Gurren. He was silent for a minute before looking at Optimus, though the Autobot leader couldn't see his face, he knew Lelouch was looking at him. He gave him a nod, saying they would talk about this. Bumblebee, Gurren, Gekka, watch our prisoners. Everyone else, we'll discuss this. Zero slowly rolled his Barai away to meet up with Optimus and the others while Bumblebee kept his grim firm on Cornelia as the Gurren and Gekka both rolled towards Starscream, with the Gekka bring its katana underneath Starscream's chin and the Gurren keeping its radiant wave surger claw only a few inches away from the back of Starscream's head. Lelouch put his mask back on as he opened his Nightmare's cockpit to speak with the Autobots around him. Well, what the rest of you suggest? Absolutely not, Ironhide stated. I can't tell you how many times Starscream's tried that same thing to us in Megatron. But he was also telling the truth about the number of times Megatron tried to scrap him. RC added. You're not saying you actually trust Starscream? Bulkhead asked. Never, not in a million years. But this may be the one time where objectives align, RC said. The Decepticon First Lieutenant has to know all sorts of juicy information. Cliffjumper added. And considering his own soldiers abandoned him, I wouldn't at least say he's itching for payback. What about Cornelia? She has to know quite a bit too, right? Wheeljack asked. But I don't think she'd be willing to talk us. She doesn't seem like the backstabbing type. Leave her to me, I can get her to talk. Zero said. The Autobots, and even Optimus, knew what Lelouch was talking about. But given Cornelia's current status, it would make sense for him to use his Geass on her. Think maybe your Geass is strong enough to use on Cybertronians yet? Ironhide asked. At least that way, we'll know if Starscream is telling the truth. No, it's not strong enough. Zero shook his head, but like Cliffjumper and RC have said, our objectives with Starscream align and he should have information that could prove to be invaluable to us. Bulkhead, Ironhide, you two are right to be wary. Optimus acknowledged. But I agree with Zero and the others. The two aforementioned Autobots glanced at each other. Though they knew their comrades made valued points and they trusted Optimus' judgment, it didn't mean they'd be willing to let their guard down around Starscream. 20 kilometers north of the Autobots and Black Knight's position, a single ground bridge portal opened up, allowing Arachnid, Thundercracker, and Skywarp, along with the 4 Knights of the Round, in their respective nightmares to arrive at their destination, the remains of the Harbinger. It appeared to be embedded in the rocks within a large canyon, almost completely buried with the back of its outer hull being only partially visible. Ah, there it is. Arachnid smirked. Whoa, an alien starship. That is so cool. Gino exclaimed with a grin. What about Cornelia or Starscream? We just left them there. Monica stated. Oh well, tough break for them. Skywarp shrugged. You would abandon one of your own. Nonet exclaimed in shock. What do you expect? If they can't keep up, they get left behind. Thundercracker stated. That's logical, right? It does make sense, Anya admitted. However, Gino's own smile faded as he looked in honest surprise. Whoa, that's a little cold, don't you think? It's reality. And it's how your empire operates, right? Arachnid reminded. What are you talking about? Gino narrowed his eyes. Your emperor said it himself. Arachnid began. Evolution is continuous, only the strong survive. But here's the thing, Britannia is not the exception, it should apply for you too. After all, that's happened to Lelouch, Nunnally, and Clovis, right? They were weak so they died, even their own daddy didn't shed a tear. I'm pretty sure the same could be said for Cornelia if she died too. What? Monica was already becoming quite angry with Arachnid, with Nonet and even Gino not far behind, though Anya remained as emotionless as ever. But I don't think the Autobots and their little friends are going to summarily execute her. Arachnid continued. After all, they're the Knights for Justice and Freedom. So, if you rescue her, you could use that to further your own status and gain even more power than you already have. A win-win situation if you ask me. Arachnid was suddenly silenced as the Galatians brought its MVS blade to Arachnid's neck, prompting Skywarp and Thundercracker to aim its Energon blasters at the White and Blue Nightmare, in which the Tristian and Florence brought their own bladed weapons to the two Seekers. Even Anya's Mordred readied its own proximity missiles. Let me make something perfectly clear, Arachnid. Nonet glared at her. I'm not in this for the glory. And contrary to what you might think, not everyone in Britannia is a merciless killer like you. If I have a chance to save Cornelia, I will take it regardless of what you might think. And, if you do anything to threaten her, Euphemia, or anyone else, I will kill you. Am I clear? Arachnid looked seriously as she used her fingers to gently lower the blade from her neck. Crystal. The Galatian lowered its weapons, prompting Thundercracker and Skywarp to do the same, followed by the other knights of the round. Now wait here while I go retrieve the weapon. By yourself. Monica narrowed her eyes. Unless your nightmares are prepared to traverse a derelict and structurally unstable warship, I suggest you stay back. Arachnid advised. Which is even more crucial if our enemies happen to catch up to us. Nobody offered her a reply as they simply watched Arachnid use her spider legs to traverse up the vertical incline of the ruins of the Harbinger, though the knights of the round couldn't help but glare. HMPH, never thought there was someone I hated more than Luciano. Gino thought to himself. Arachnid seemed to traverse through the dusty insides of the Harbinger with little issue, making it rather easily into Section 23 where she tore open a storage compartment to find what she had been looking for. Be still, my beating spark. She pulled out a rod-like device with a trident-like attachment at the end that began to spin around as it emanated a light blue energy vortex from its tip. The Autobots in their vehicle modes, along with Optimus carrying a trailer behind his truck mode, drove along with the Gurren, Gekka, and Barai, piloted by Colin, Rai, and Zero respectively toward their intended destination. They all came to a stop just before the large stone arch that Starscream described before the Autobots, minus Bumblebee, all transformed back to their robot modes. Looks like he was telling the truth. Colin noticed. Don't let your guard down, could still be a trap. RC advised. Starscream's loyalty to Megatron has always been questionable. Optimus commented as he left the trailer behind upon transforming. From your descriptions, however, the only one he appears to be truly loyal toward is himself. Zero replied. Ironic, considering most of his schemes end up backfiring in his face in the most explosive way. Cliffjumper added. Talk about being your own worst enemy. Rai commented. But that doesn't mean he's not dangerous. Ironhide said. In fact, his own insecurities are what make him unpredictable, which might arguably make him more dangerous than Megatron. That has to be an exaggeration, right? Colin asked. I mean, we've all seen Megatron, that guy is freaking huge. And Starscream looks like he has noodles for arms. Screamy might not be a gladiator, but he'll backstab you the first chance he gets. Bulkhead said. If Starscream's tried to backstab Megatron multiple times, why does he even keep him around? Rai asked. I have to agree. Zero said. If Starscream was in our ranks, I'd have him removed the first attempted coup. Wheeljack shrugged. Don't know, maybe a stress reliever. I mean, beating him up is kind of fun. What's the old saying? Keep your friends close but your enemies closer. Bulkhead mused. What do you think, Optimus? Zero asked. As you all have stated, the only one Starscream truly serves is himself. Optimus began. If he has truly split from the Decepticons, his knowledge of their agendas could make him a valuable ally. You're not suggesting that he'd actually join us, right? Rai questioned. A sleazebag like him. I gotta agree with the kid, Optimus. Ironhide agreed. If we keep Starscream around, it's only gonna do more harm than good. I understand how many of you all feel. Optimus replied. And I agree that it is highly unlikely that Starscream, or any other Decepticon would choose the path of good, even they possess the potential for change. Even bot killers. Even Arachnid. RC exclaimed. Or Cornelia. Or that goddamn Emperor. Colin exclaimed as well. Without that hope, we may never achieve lasting peace. Optimus said. Though he knew that there were indeed those that are incapable of change, there were also those that were. That had Lelouch think for a bit. There was a time when he and Cornelia were close, but after all she's done, the odds of them reforming any sort of bond were unlikely. Hey, speaking of which, can someone get her out of my trunk? She's really putting up a fight. Bumblebee pointed out as his trunk began to shake slightly. The Gurren and Gekka, both deactivated as their pilots, both wearing visors to hide their identities, lowered themselves from their nightmares. Colin and Rai walked to Bumblebee and opened his truck to reveal Cornelia. She was completely wrapped in duct tape. Her wrists were tapped behind her back, her ankles tapped together, with more duct tape wrapping around her to bind her arms to her side, with a single strip of duct tape to cover her mouth. Not so fun now that you're helpless, is it? Colin smirked as Cornelia glared and muffled a curse under her gag, even as she and Rye dragged her out of Bumblebee's trunk, allowing him to transform back to normal. "About time we get our other guest out," Ironhide said as Bulkhead walked to the trailer and opened it. "Rise and shine, Screamy." Bulkhead dragged Starscream out by his feet, his hands were cuffed in front of him with his wings clamped back to prevent him from transforming. He grunted a bit as he was dragged out. "We're here. Where's the ship?" RC questioned. Starscream looked at his surroundings for a second before answering. "It's through the arch, among the stones." Optimus looked back towards the arch a brief moment before relaying instructions. "Ironhide, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, Cliffjumper, and Wheeljack, you're with me. Gekka Pilot, you as well." "Got it." Rye nodded as he walked away from the bound Cornelia to climb back into his nightmare. "Zero, RC, Gurren Pilot, remain with our prisoners." "Understood," Zero said from inside his nightmare as he reached down with his Barai's hand to grab the bound Cornelia. "I'm going to have a chat with Her Majesty. See that we're not disturbed." Colin nodded as she went back to the Gurren. As the other Autobots, and the Gekka, began to leave, RC tried to plead with her leader. "Optimus, please. For tailgate." Though Optimus did understand where she was coming from, and knew her spark was in the right place, they had to be careful in this situation. "Your desire to avenge tailgate will only continue to cloud your judgment," he said before walking away. Starscream ached a bit in pain. "Is the clamp really necessary?" he asked, getting RC's and Colin's attention. "I promise not to fly away, it's really giving me a crick." "We can shove you back in the trailer if you want," Colin told him, causing Starscream to grumble. "The trailer is currently occupied at the moment," Zero said as his Barai, along with Cornelia literally in hand, were already inside. After the trailer door was closed behind, Cornelia was set down relatively gently in the far right corner before the Barai kneeled down, while keeping its lights on for illumination. It deactivated, allowing Zero to step out now that he was sure he could speak with Cornelia privately. He slowly walked toward Cornelia, who glared daggers at him. He reached forward and painfully ripped the tape from her mouth, causing her to grunt. "It's about time we finally met face to face," Zero said. "Zero, if you think for one second that I'm going to beg for mercy, forget it," she exclaimed. "No, you're not the type to beg, are you?" Zero acknowledged. "Not like Clovis, who begged for his own life. Even after he so callously ordered the death of countless innocent people. Which you tried to do in Saitama if only to lure me out. Guess this apple truly did not fall far from the tree. Who are you to judge me?" Cornelia exclaimed. "A masked terrorist who claims to fight for justice. I don't claim to fight for anything. The cause I fight for is real. Which is more than I can say for yours." Zero shook his head with a sigh. "It pains me to see just how far you've fallen. I truly did admire you." "What, are you some kind of fan?" Cornelia questioned. "No, but you and I were close." Zero took off his mask to reveal his face. "Dear sister." Cornelia gasped as her eyes widened with absolute shock. Any anger from her face had morphed into complete and absolute surprise. Lelouch. It's been a long time, hasn't it, Cornelia?" Lelouch glared at his elder half-sister. Optimus led the group consisting of Bumblebee, Rye, Ironhide, Bulkhead, Wheeljack, and Cliffjumper through a narrow path in the canyon-like area. The Autobots had their Energon blasters at the ready, while Ray's Gekka already had its katana unsheathed. "Be alert, Arachnid is known to attack from below ground," Optimus advised. "And we still know little of the Knights of the Round's battle strategies. We could be attacked at any moment." "Right," Bulkhead said as everyone else nodded. They passed the rockiest area before coming to a large open area where they spotted the derelict Harbinger. Optimus raised his hand to silently halt the group's advance, before motioning to proceed forward. Rye however noticed some incoming dots on his Gekka's radar screen. "Incoming at 3 o'clock, he exclaimed as the group dispersed to avoid multiple blasts shot at them. The Autobots looked in surprise to see the Tristian, Galatian, Florence, and Mordred all roll down the hillside, each blasting missiles or Varus at the enemy, forcing the Autobots to find cover and return fire. But it wasn't just the 4 Knights of the Round on the attack. Skywarp and Thundercracker flew down in their jet modes to open fire as well right as the Knights made contact with the ground and engaged the Autobots and the Gekka. This was all meanwhile being observed by Arachnid, who smirked, seeing this as a perfect opportunity to test her new weapon. She aimed and opened fire on Bulkhead just as he knocked the Florence down with his mace. The weapon fired a spiral-like beam, and once it hit Bulkhead, he instantly became frozen and unable to move. Everyone, Autobot and Decepticon, Black Knight, or Britannian soldier, looked shocked at what just happened as Arachnid brandished her new weapon. The Immobilizer. True to its name, she said before resuming her trial run. Meanwhile, back in the trailer, Cornelia was rendered speechless at the sight of her younger half-brother's glaring face. What? No. Hello. No. How have you been, Lelouch? Honestly, I'm hurt. Lelouch, I don't. How? Cornelia stuttered. How are you? Alive. Lelouch questioned. You mean since our father exiled me in Nunnally? Since you abandoned us? The mention of her younger sister's name caught Cornelia's attention. Nunnally. Is she? She's alive, Lelouch told her. And she's safe, far away from our father, and far away from you. What? Why would you want to protect her from me? I would never hurt. Cornelia was still not over the shock. I used to think that. Lelouch said, anger clear across his face. I used to think that our big sister would always protect us. Until you weren't there, until you just stood by and watched as Nunnally and I were practically sentenced to death. And even more despicable, the very thought that you would betray our mother. What does that mean? I would never betray your mother, Lelouch. Cornelia exclaimed until her eyes widened with realization. Is that why you're Zero? She soon glared at her. Is that why you killed Clovis and betrayed your own nation? Your own family? Britannia betrayed us, Lelouch shouted. Our father betrayed me in Nunnally. You betrayed me in Nunnally. Clovis ordered hundreds of people to be executed to cover up his own conspiracies. He deserved what he got. And it's not just him. Countless innocent people are being killed and prejudiced against every day by Britannia. By our father. By you. How many people did you slaughter to get where you are now? Cornelia wasn't sure how to respond at first, her mind still racing over the fact not only were her brother and sister alive, but even Lelouch admitted that he'd turn against Britannia. I cannot be part of that same world you and that monster you call our father are creating. Lelouch continued. A world where the weak and helpless are just stepping stones for you. I'll destroy that world myself if I have to. So, you've allied yourself with alien monstrosities. Cornelia growled. You have no room to talk. Lelouch exclaimed. Considering your partnership with Megatron, who is even worse than Charles Z. Britannia. Say what you will about me, but I won't let you speak a word of vanity in regard to the Autobots, especially Optimus Prime. He's been more of a father to me than Charles ever was. What? Cornelia couldn't fathom the idea of the same alien who bested her in battle being a father figure to her own brother. I already lost one parent at your hands, Cornelia. I'll be damned if I let you take another from me. Lelouch stated. What are you talking about? Cornelia questioned. I'm talking about my mother. Whose death you were responsible for. Lelouch shouted in pure ire. Cornelia's eyes widened, she looked to Lelouch almost as if he had grown a second head. You think that I would, Lelouch? I did not kill your mother. I asked Clovis about it. Lelouch continued. His exact words were, my brother Schneisel and my sister Cornelia, they can tell you. I did not kill your mother, Lelouch. Cornelia shouted. I had nothing but absolute respect for her. I would never even think about hurting her. The fact that you think I would, or that I would even harm Nunnally is nothing short of insulting. It doesn't matter what you think. The truth cannot be hidden from me any longer. Lelouch glared as the Geass sigil manifested in his left eye. Starting now, you will tell me everything I want to know. The Geass sigil flew into Cornelia's eyes and rewrote her brainwave patterns, where a red ring formed in both her eyes. Her face became almost emotionless as she addressed her brother. Of course, what do you wish to know? Did you kill my mother? Lelouch glared. No, I did not. Cornelia revealed, much to Lelouch's surprise. Did you have anything to do with it? Lelouch questioned further. No, Cornelia responded. Lelouch looked in surprise once more, before his look faded into frustration. What did Clovis mean then when he said you could tell me about it? He was likely referring to my investigations on the incident. Cornelia answered. That caught Lelouch off guard. You were investigating her murder. Why? Because, as I said, I had nothing but respect for your mother. I would never think about laying a hand against her. Cornelia answered, still under the influence of his Geass. Though Lelouch was shocked by this revelation, he could still use this to get information from her. Tell me everything you know about the incident. I found nothing in my investigation. Cornelia began. Though I've theorized that it is likely someone from the royal family, aside from myself, Euphemia, Clovis, and Schneisel. Does that include the emperor? Lelouch questioned further. No, though I cannot see a reason why he would, I remain quite suspicious of him. Cornelia said. Then why don't you do anything about it? Lelouch asked. Because I have no evidence, and even if I did, I worry he would do something to Euphemia if I went against him. Cornelia answered. Lelouch honestly wasn't surprised. She always did dawdle over Euphemia, and he wouldn't put it past Charles to use her as leverage against Cornelia. Is there anything else I should know? Yes, there is. Cornelia continued. The day before the murder, Lady Marianne asked me personally to shut down security and relieve the guards of their duty for the night. That took Lelouch by surprise. What? Why would she do that? I do not know, she didn't say anything other than she was expecting a guest. Cornelia answered. That was the last I heard from her before her death. The prince turned revolutionary side in disappointment. He was honestly no closer to avenging his mother's death as all he did was rule out one single suspect. You would never betray my mother? He asked, his Geass still active. Never. Cornelia confirmed. You would never betray, Nunnally or myself? Lelouch asked, his voice softening a bit. Never. Cornelia confirmed once more. Lelouch's own anger soon faded, as once she said that, he remembered his past with Cornelia. He remembered how she and Euphemia would come over to the Ares villa all the time to play with him and Nunnally. She even used to read bedtime stories to him, Nunnally and Euphemia, as they even slept in the same bed in their toddler years. How did you handle the news of Nunnally and my supposed deaths after Japan fell? Any time I wasn't spent comforting Euphemia, I cried my own eyes out. I even cried myself to sleep for a week. Cornelia revealed, causing Lelouch to look in emotional shock as he felt his own emotions shake. If you learned we were alive, what would you do? He asked. I would protect you too, with everything that I have. Cornelia answered. Even from our father, even from Megatron. Yes, Cornelia answered. Why? Because I love you. Lelouch was not prepared for those words, his own eyes began to shake despite his Geass still being active as Cornelia continued. Lelouch, I love you and Nunnally as much as I love Euphy. She answered honestly, still under the influence of Lelouch's Geass. If you need me to protect you from even Britannia itself, I would do so without hesitation. I also have no doubt that Euphemia, and even the remainder of the Glaston Knights would as well. Why them? Lelouch asked, emotion filling his voice. Because they've sworn loyalty to me, not to the Emperor. Cornelia answered. I know them. If they would choose between me or our father, they would choose me. Even after I rebelled? Lelouch questioned, tears already forming in his eyes. Yes, your actions for rebelling are understandable. Even after, Clovis, Lelouch stuttered. Yes. Though he still kept his Geass active, Lelouch turned away from his sister as he pressed his hand against the walls of the trailer. Tears were ready to fall down from his eyes. In his childhood, he truly did love Cornelia and admired her as his big sister. And now, she had honestly said, albeit under the influence of a Geass, that she would walk away from Britannia and even fight the Decepticons for his and Nunnally's sake. There was a part of him that considered using his Geass to order her to do so, but that would make him no different from their father or even Megatron. Besides, would the Black Knights be so acceptant of Cornelia after what she done? Probably not, but if he revealed his own status, it might help them to become more open-minded. Even Optimus said that there were those with the potential to change. However, all this could wait. He still had Cornelia under his Geass influence and he had a job to do. So, he squashed down his emotions as he faced her once again. I want you to tell me everything about Britannia's military operations here in Japan. Lelouch said. Of course, whatever you need, Cornelia replied. At the same time, Colin still remained in her Gurren as RC continued to pace in front of Starscream. The redhead glanced in the direction of the trailer, deeply concerned for Lelouch. Though she knew he could handle himself and his Geass would keep Cornelia from hurting him, she could only imagine how difficult this must be for him. Despite everything, Cornelia was still his sister. Though Lelouch didn't go into the specifics of their relationship, it must still be hard to feel betrayed by someone you once trusted and loved. "I'm not really so bad, you know," Starscream said, more so to RC, while also getting Colin's attention. "Megatron, he's the evil one. Tell it to someone who cares." RC replied. "Like whom? Arachnid, or Thundercracker and Skywarp?" Starscream scoffed. "What I wouldn't do to get my hands around their wretched throats." Guess we agree on something after all," Colin commented. "Oh, you have no idea." Starscream began his rant. "I've worked with those two for eons. Long before I joined Megatron, I was air commander of an entire Seeker armada. I worked hard to bring those two up in the ranks. Thundercracker was my top scientist, though Skywarp was no genius, he had exceptional combat skills. And after all I've done for them, they still see fit to, as you humans say, throw me under the transport bus. The phrase is, under the bus," Colin corrected. "And don't even get me started on Arachnid," Starscream continued. "She showed up one day after deserting our cause, and the next thing you know she's acting like she runs the place. She whispered lies into Megatron's ear, maneuvered to rob me of my rightful place. Well, she terminated my partner." RC looked down as Colin had her own sympathetic expression to give to RC, despite nobody seeing it in her nightmare. "Oh, well, my apologies," Starscream said. "Don't act like you're any different," RC exclaimed, getting right up to Starscream's face. "How many times have you backstabbed someone? Only to beg for your miserable life and end up doing it again?" Starscream stuttered. "I admit, I was not the most honest of bots, but I've changed." "Have you?" Colin questioned. "I know a rat when I see one. I know who you are, the Autobots told me and everyone else what you've done, Screamy. All the times you tried to usurp Megatron to make yourself leader of the Decepticons, only to crawl right back to his feet begging him to rejoin. Honestly, I'm surprised he's even keeping you around." "Oh, and would you rather have him as leader of the Decepticons?" Starscream questioned. "Did you know he was directly responsible for destroying our world? I never wanted Cybertron destroyed." "No, you just wanted to rule it yourself," RC stated. "Everything you've done has solely been for yourself. You never once changed, Starscream. Not once in a million years since the war began. How can any of us trust that you're changing now?" Okay, it was a mistake. I've made many, monumental ones, but I swear I've changed." Starscream looked like he was begging, in fact he was even as he bent down on his cuffed hands and knees. Please reconsider my termination." Colin looked at Starscream with a befuddled expression. Are you serious right now?" "RC, is he actually serious?" RC rolled her eyes in annoyance. "I have no idea." "Wow, you are just pathetic," Colin commented to the Seeker. "How you could end up as the Khan's second in command is beyond me. Come on, get up, we're not gonna kill you." RC bent over to bring him up. "What even made you?" RC's optics widened as she felt a gash across her abdomen, stuttering back right into the Gurren's grip. "RC, what happened?" she exclaimed upon seeing the bleeding energon leaking from RC's wound, only to look in even further shock as she heard a similar slash across her own nightmare's lower abs. She saw her systems begin to flicker on and off as she saw on the screen briefly a smirking Starscream holding important pieces of the Gurren's insides in his claws before the Gurren fell over on its back. Starscream snickered as he reached down for the key to his cuffs that RC had dropped upon being slashed before he freed himself. "What's the matter, RC? After all, you really shouldn't be surprised." At the same time, the Autobots and Rai were currently on the defensive, doing what they can to avoid the blasts from Arachnid's newly acquired immobilizer, while also defending themselves from the relentless attacks from Skywarp, Thundercracker, and the Knights of the Round. Wheeljack rolled back to avoid the continuous missile blasts from the Mordred as he drew his dual swords and rushed the Mordred, avoiding the Varus blast shot from its shoulder units. Once he was close enough, he leapt at the Mordred, spinning his blades in front of him like a drill, which Anya tried to block by crossing the Mordred's arms, only for the arms to be torn up. However, as Wheeljack landed on his feet, Anya sped the Mordred forward into Wheeljack, crashing both the Nightmare and the Autobot into a large rock. Wheeljack however dug his feet into the ground and tried to press back against the Mordred as Anya tried to press it forward, spinning the tiers hard until smoke began to shoot out from them. "That all you got, kid?" Wheeljack grunted. However, both the Mordred and Wheeljack were hit with a large beam shot by the immobilizer, striking them both. Wheeljack completely froze, as did the Mordred, much to the surprise of remaining 3 knights. "Anya!" Gino exclaimed, unfortunately leaving him open to be decked across the face by Ironhide. Anya herself was unharmed, but it seems as though her Nightmare's systems have completely shut down. "Controls unresponsive," she said in a monotone voice. "Communications unresponsive. Manual ejection and override, all unresponsive. I am stuck." Nonette kept firing her Varus at Bumblebee, who dodged each of the blasts, while also turning to Arachnid who was at the top of a large rock. "You hit one of our own. She was in the way." Arachnid shrugged. "And I see no reason why she wouldn't be hurt. This weapon only seems to work on Cybertronians. Since she's a human, she should be fine." Arachnid was caught off guard by a series of Harkins shot straight up at her as the Gekka pre-production leapt at Arachnid and tried to bring an axe kick down on her. But she leapt back off the rock just as the Gekka shattered it with its kick. "Let's see you try that thing on me." Rai shot his Gekka straight at Arachnid, hopping to hit her at a speed that she couldn't react in time. Unfortunately, her reaction time was better than he thought as she quickly hit the Blue Nightmare with a point-blank attack from the immobilizer, halting the Gekka in its tracks. Rai himself was fine, but his Nightmare was completely locked in place. "Scrap. Kid," Cliffjumper exclaimed, while also backflipping to avoid 2 waist-mounted Harkins shot by Monica in the Florence as she drove in pursuit of him. At the same time, Optimus was busy duking it out with both Thundercracker and Skywarp. The largest of the Seekers drew his own blade to fly down and clash with Optimus' own blades, but Optimus was able to counter and deliver a kick to send Thundercracker flying back. He was however pelted in the back by Energon blasts from Skywarp, but Optimus was unharmed enough to return fire with his own Energon blasters, which Skywarp attempted to avoid as he transformed and flew into the air. Ironhide meanwhile opened fire with his Energon cannons at Gino's Tristian, which it rolled away to avoid on its land spinner wheels before driving itself straight towards the veteran Autobot with both its MVS blades. Gino slashed with the right blade, which Ironhide bluntly blocked with his right cannon, and ended up stepping his left foot over the Tristian's feet, causing it to trip up and flip and skid across the ground. "You're good kid," Ironhide granted. "But talent or not, you still got a lot to learn," he said, clearly having more experience over the Knight of 3. However, this also left him vulnerable to get immobilized by Arachnid's new weapon, causing her to smirk. "And here I thought experience comes with age." Arachnid taunted the frozen veteran Autobot. "Thanks, Arachnid," Gino said as he stood his Tristan up. "But I could've." Gino however did not expect Arachnid to turn the immobilizer on him and freeze his own Nightmare, much to his shock. "Arachnid." Nonette stopped fighting with Bumblebee completely as she turned her Varus on the Spider-Con, shooting at her, and forcing her to avoid the destructive blasts. "I knew you couldn't be trusted." She shot her Varus again and tried to obliterate Arachnid's cover, only to find she had completely vanished. However, Arachnid tunneled her way back up from behind the Galician. "You're only figuring that out now," she said as she zapped the Knight of Nine's Nightmare with her immobilizer to freeze it. Arachnid was then forced on the defensive once more as both Cliffjumper and the Florence shot Energon blasts and Harkins respectively. "Quick truce," the red Autobot offered the Knight of 12. "For now." Moniz agreed as they attempted to double-team Arachnid, but much like before she tunneled underground as Cliffjumper tried to shoot her, he ran up alongside the Florence to look down in the hole to see she had vanished. "Well, that sucks," Cliffjumper commented, only for the ground underneath them to shake even further. But not as much as that. Suddenly the ground below exploded, sending both Cliffjumper and Monica skidding in separate directions as Arachnid emerged from the ground, quickly using the immobilizer to freeze them both before they even got back up, bringing their truce to an end. At the same time, Bumblebee had come in to provide Optimus some backup as he drove up and transformed to deliver a flying punch to Skywarp's face and send him crashing into Thundercracker, whom Optimus just slammed down into the ground along with the flying Skywarp. However, Arachnid had also used this as a perfect opportunity to once again emerge from under the ground beneath the only remaining mobile Autobots. Freeze! She shot the immobilizer at Optimus, rendering him immobile. Bumblebee tried to shoot at her, only for Arachnid to leap up onto a series of rocks. Before however she shot Bumblebee, she used this opportunity to hit Thundercracker and Skywarp with her weapon, freezing them in a pile before they even had a chance to recover. She then resumed her attack on the only enemy left, Bumblebee. Lelouch felt the trailer rock as he tried to steady himself, with his Barai almost toppling over as well. What's going on out there? It would seem something is impacting the trailer. Cornelia observed, still tied up in duct tape, and under the influence of Lelouch's Geass. He grunted in frustration as he knew they needed his help right now, but what about Cornelia? He already learned everything he needed to know from her, both personal and military-wise. He wasn't going to force her to join him, even though he wanted her by his side. And now was not the time. If Megatron or Charles ever found out, it would put both Cornelia and Euphemia in danger. Not to mention there was how the rest of the Black Knights would feel. So, for the moment, it'd probably be best she remained his enemy, if only as protection. Irony at its finest. Lelouch tore off another piece of duct tape and placed it over Cornelia's mouth as he relayed his final instructions. Listen, when I put my mask back on, you are going to forget about this conversation. Everything from the moment I first took it off in front of you. So far as you are concerned, you still do not know Zero's identity. Am I clear? She nodded as Lelouch sighed, placing the mask over his face and finally turning off his Geass. The red rings vanished from her eyes as she resumed her venomous glare, muffling all sorts of curses and death threats at Zero under her gag. Lelouch looked at her with sympathy before turning around. Stay here, he said as he got into his Barai. However, what he didn't know was that Cornelia had a knife hidden in her sleeve, which she let slide out to begin cutting the restraints around her bound wrists. She had kept that hidden, ready to stab Zero at a moment's notice, but apparently, he wasn't giving her the time. Outside, RC did her best to block Starscream's relentless claw strikes with a single arm blade as she used her other hand to keep holding the wound he inflicted on her. After a few more blocks, she delivered a kick to Starscream's face to knock him back. You're definitely a tough Autobot, I'll grant you that. Starscream mused. But how long can you last? You've already lost quite a bit of energon, haven't you? Suddenly, Starscream was punched across the face by Zero's Barai, knocking him down. Then why don't you pick on someone your own size, you filthy coward? He exclaimed as he opened fire with his Barai's rifle. The magnesium bullets grazed Starscream as he tried to run away to avoid any serious damage before kneeling his nightmare down to help up RC. RC, are you alright? What happened? Where's Colin? The blue fembot grunted. Let my guard down. The Gurin's down, but Colin is fine. They faced the recovering Starscream as he growled. We'll take him together, Zero said as he glared at the Seeker. Sounds like a plan, RC agreed as they charged at Starscream. Meanwhile, Colin was able to forcibly open her Gurin's cockpit to try and pull herself out. Damn it, can't believe I let him get the drop on me. However, Colin was pulled out of her thoughts as someone yanked her from her cockpit and forced her to the ground, keeping her hands pinned behind her back. Though Colin still had her visor on, she glared at Cornelia who had just freed herself as she kept Colin pinned and the knife close to her neck. Don't move, Black Knight. Cornelia practically growled. Colin however was far from helpless as she bent her legs and kicked Cornelia in the back, forcing the older woman to loosen her grip and allowing Colin to free her arms and punch Cornelia off her, allowing the young Black Knight to stand back up and point a pistol at her. Same to you. Colin glared under her visor. Cornelia practically snarled. Filthy 11, taking the coward's route. Really? And you're not a coward? Colin scoffed. But, if you're really that prideful, she threw her gun away and cracked her knuckles. Cornelia did the same with her knife before rushing Colin with her bare hands to try and punch her, but Colin caught the punch, spun her body around to grab Cornelia's arm, while also spreading her left leg over Cornelia's and hauling the Britannian princess over her shoulder and flipping her on the ground. What's wrong? Colin taunted. Never thought an 11 could defend herself. She made her own martial arts stance as Cornelia tried to pull herself back up. Let's see how well you fight without your precious nightmare. Colin made a hand gesture to bring it on, which the angry Cornelia obliged. Tell me, Bug, do you think Megatron will enjoy his new trophies? Arachnid called out to Bumblebee as he continued to hide. He'll probably use the bulky ones for target practice. She mused as she had not only tipped over Immobile Bulkhead but did the same for the frozen Ironhide as well. As for the precious knights of the round, she mused aloud, as while their own nightmares were inoperable, they themselves could still hear Arachnid's taunts as their own eyes narrowed. I'll let their precious emperor decide their fate for their failure. She tauntingly walked over to the frozen gecko with the glaring Rai still inside. Though I might throw them a bone and hand them over one of the Black Knight's top pilots. She tauntingly tipped over the gecko, knocking Rai inside. Say that to my face, bitch. Rai shouted, even though Arachnid couldn't hear him. Prime is the true prize. Arachnid continued as she crawled on top of his shoulders with her spider legs. Perhaps he'll adorn the prow of Megatron's warship. She then opened fire with her energon palms at the spot where she glanced Bumblebee. However, the scout saw some stray blasts hit the rock in front of him and creating a small cloud of dust. This gave him an idea as he opened fire at the same rock with his own energon blasters, causing the entire rock to collapse and create an even larger dust cloud. Arachnid saw a few stray blasts coming her way, so she shot her immobilizer through the dust cloud until it began to clear. When it did, it would appear that she had successfully froze Bumblebee as he appeared stuck in mid-run. But you, Bug, Arachnid taunted as she walked closer to him. I suspect Megatron will simply dismantle you, the Wrecker, and your talkative friend for spare parts. She then walked over toward the still frozen Thundercracker and Skywarp, stuck in their pile. Tell me you two, what do you think? Two of the greatest seekers in Decepticon history, who abandoned their own commander for a weapon, only to be dealt with by a former deserter who chooses to turn you in to redeem herself. That sounds like a good deal, doesn't it? She then walked over towards Optimus' immobile form, still monologuing, not noticing that Bumblebee was in fact not frozen and quietly snuck his way closer to the rambling Decepticon. I mean, with prizes and results like this, I could earn Megatron's eternal trust. I don't think so. She turned around in surprise to see Bumblebee's fist before it made contact with her face to not only knock her down but also the immobilizer out her hands. Before she could even react, Bumblebee had grabbed the device and used it to freeze Arachnid herself. Not so fun, is it? Bumblebee bleeped. He then looked to Optimus and spoke in bleeps aloud to all his friends so they could hear him. Sorry guys. I'll call Ratchet later. I don't wanna take any chances with something like this. But I gotta go check in on Zero and the others. Be back soon. He transformed and drove his way back to the spot where he left his remaining comrades. Starscream had delivered a knee to the injured Arcee's abs, before driving an elbow into her back to knock her down and later kick her down the hill. However, this also left Starscream open for Zero to open fire on him with his Barai, forcing the Seeker to take cover behind the trailer. Zero tried to steer around the trailer and shoot Starscream again, but the Seeker had expected this and opened fire with a missile wrist to blast off the legs of the Barai and send the remainder crashing across the ground. Starscream snickered as he walked toward the downed Nightmare. You may be a competent strategist, Zero. Starscream taunted. But your combat skills still leave a lot to be desired. Colin had punched down Cornelia and saw the state her friends were in. RC. Zero. She tried to run and help, only for Cornelia to grab her by the shoulder and punch her across the face, almost knocking the visor off. Don't you dare turn your back on me. Cornelia tried to press her attack, only for Colin to grab her by the shoulders and slam her knee into her abs before headbutting her and knocking her down. However, Cornelia swept her legs to knock Colin down and tried to put her in a chokehold. Zero opened his cockpit only to see the smirking Starscream looming over him. If you think I'm going to beg for mercy, Starscream. Forget it. He glared from underneath his mask. Starscream was slightly caught off guard by Zero's defiance. Yes. Begging for mercy would be quite pathetic, wouldn't it? He kneeled down closer to Zero, who stood up fully from the remains of his Barai. Well, you're much more valuable to me alive. Imagine Megatron's appreciation, when I not only deliver him an invaluable weapon, but even the ever-elusive Zero. I think that would restore my stature quite nicely. However, the Seeker was suddenly blasted in the back, and his shocked expression was the one that would be frozen with the rest of his immobile body for the time being, much to Zero's surprise. He looked past the immobile seeker to see the one responsible. Bumblebee. The yellow Autobot was also above Cornelia, pointing his energon blasters at her, motioning for her to let Colin go and stand up. With great reluctance, Cornelia raised her hands, knowing she couldn't best an Autobot, leaving her open for Colin to slug her in the face and knock her unconscious. That felt good. Colin smirked, only for her to look in fear and concern as she, B, and Zero heard RC's painful grunt. RC. Zero exclaimed as he, Colin and Bumblebee all ran to help her. Are you alright? I'll live, she grunted as Bumblebee helped her on his feet. What the heck happened to everyone else? Colin asked Bumblebee. Same thing that happened to him. Bumblebee pointed to the frozen Starscream. With this, let me guess, a Decepticon weapon that can immobilize both Cybertronians and apparently nightmares. Zero assumed. Yup. Bumblebee confirmed. Can you reverse it? Colin asked. Ratchet might be able to. But we'll need backup to haul everyone back to the Ark. Bumblebee answered. What about her? The injured RC asked, referring to Cornelia. And the Konzen, and the Knights. Leave them, Zero said. I got everything I need from Cornelia. Let the Knights and Decepticons go back to their masters in disgrace. Bumblebee contacted the Ark. Ratchet, we need a ground bridge. And some extra help, we've got a heavy haul. As Bumblebee tried to explain everything to Ratchet back at the Ark, Lelouch paid one final glance to his elder sister, a feeling of remorse filling his entire body. The Nemesis, 1 hour later. After receiving no response from their forces, Soundwave had located the immobile Decepticon quartet, as well as those in the Knights of the Round, and even Cornelia herself who had regained consciousness. Knockout was able to effectively reverse the stasis lock on everyone present, before Soundwave returned Cornelia and the Knights to Japan, while also transporting Starscream, Arachnid, Thundercracker, and Skywarp to Megatron, who was less than pleased over what happened. After Soundwave was told what happened by all the Knights, with Soundwave himself confirming they weren't lying, Megatron knew exactly what happened. Starscream was thrown against the wall, Arachnid slammed against the ground, while Thundercracker and Skywarp's faces were pounded together before all four of them were on their hands and knees before their enraged master. It would seem that deceit is in all your nature, Megatron muttered. I am the victim here. Starscream protested. They abounded me. I was only. He was sent flying by a slap from Megatron. I will not tolerate your excuses. The Decepticon leader shouted. My lordship, it was the incompetence of the Knights that cost us the immobilizer. Arachnid stated. No, you turned it on us. Thundercracker argued. Yeah, this whole mess was your fault. Skywarp agreed, only for all three of them to be smacked into the recovering Starscream by Megatron. I've heard this same excuse multiple times before. Megatron stated as he walked toward all four of them, grabbing Skywarp and Thundercracker by their throats, while also stepping on Starscream's body and Arachnid's head to squeeze them further. It's not my fault. If only it weren't, for them, if only they'd listened to me. It's just one excuse after another. This is why our enemies continue to best us. Because you are each so busy trying to usurp the others, you allow the enemy to take advantage of our divided nature. He slammed both Thundercracker and Skywarp down onto Arachnid and Starscream. But I will not tolerate this any longer. Listen to me well, all of you. Megatron told the four of them as they tried to recover. You will find a way to work together. There will be no further fighting among our own ranks. If any of you try this again, you will all perish. Even if the others weren't involved. The fates of you four are now linked together. If even one of you sabotages myself, each other, or anyone else in our own ranks, I will terminate all of you. Am I understood? All four of them, even Arachnid, looked in fear at the glowing red eyes of the leader of the Decepticons, prompting them all to bow their heads, on their hands and knees. Yes, Lord Megatron, I understand perfectly. Starscream bowed fearfully. We live to serve you. Thundercracker bowed as well. Yes, your wish is our command. Skywarp also submitted. Megatron then paid one last glare at Arachnid, who had yet to say anything. Though she bowed as well. I will serve you as well. I submit to your will, Lord Megatron. The Ark, the bridge. Ratchet had finished his work on reversing the effects of the immobilizer on all the Autobots as well as the Gekka. There, you are all now fully functional. It was especially helpful that you brought the device back in one piece. Yeah, figured it was best to let you handle it. Bumblebee nodded as the rest of the Autobots stretched their limbs. How's RC? Cliffjumper asked. She'll make a full recovery, don't worry. Ratchet assured. That's good. Colin sighed in relief. What about the Gurren? The damage was extensive, Fix-It reported, but it should be repaired and fully functional again relatively soon. Well, now we got both the Polarity Gauntlet and the Immobilizer. Rai stated. Another win for us. Not to mention we took on Britannia's best pilots and sent them running. Wheeljack smirked. I think that was mostly because Arachnid stabbed them in the back. Bulkhead commented. True, but that's only going to cost the cons and Brits more trouble. Wheeljack continued. If they keep fighting each other, it just gives us the advantage. Though while the division between Britannia and the Decepticons is indeed beneficial, we cannot rely solely on it. Optimus advised. The Knights of the Round have proven to be formidable opponents and are not to be underestimated. We also can't count on the cons and Britannia being divided forever. Ironhide added. We have to be ready for if they truly unite. As everyone began to discuss this, Lelouch himself stood on the catwalk of the bridge, something still on his mind that he needed to talk with his mentor and father figure. Optimus. He got the Autobot leader's attention. I'd like to speak with you, please. Of course. Optimus nodded. Lelouch had later met with Optimus in an empty cargo bay where he had told him everything about his encounter with Cornelia. All the military information he gained from her, as well as knowledge in regard to his mother's death, and even what Cornelia would do for his and Nunnally's sake. When it was done, Lelouch sat down on some large cargo containers, being on equal level with Optimus' abdomen as he hung his head, placing his hands on his forehead as Optimus listened to every word. I see. Optimus finally spoke. This information will prove most beneficial to our cause. Do you think I did the right thing? Lelouch asked, erasing her memories of our discussion. Keeping my identity a secret. Given our current circumstances, I would say that was a wise move. Optimus granted, though Lelouch still felt conflicted over quite a few things. But something else is on your mind. Lelouch, forgive me if this is too personal, but what was your relationship with Cornelia before your exile? I loved her, Lelouch said honestly as his own eyes began to water. She was my big sister. She always coddled over me, Nunnally, and Yuffie. I admired her skills as a warrior, I even wanted to be like her one day. I looked up to her, in the same way I admired my mother. But, after our exile, and after Japan was attacked, I just felt so angry. Like she and everyone else just abandoned us. Abandoned me. You have no idea how much that hurt. Which was one of the reasons you chose to rebel and become Zero. Optimus said. I still firmly believe that we can change this world. Lelouch said honestly. I became Zero to destroy Britannia because it would one day destroy everything else. I wanted to make a world where Nunnally could find happiness. But, you're right. I wanted revenge. I wanted revenge on my father and everyone else for abandoning us. For following Charles's ways, following Megatron's ways on destroying the weak. After seeing what Cornelia did in Saitama, I lost all respect for her. I felt she was just our father, cruel and evil, but I was wrong. She still loves me, and Nunnally, he was already crying. Now I can't bring myself to hate her. I want her by my side, working with us. Optimus looked toward Lelouch with nothing but sympathy as he continued to cry. I'm not naive enough to think the Black Knights would accept her so easily, not after everything she's done, Lelouch continued. But, I remember how you said, even Decepticons possess potential for change. Optimus, please. Is it possible for her to change? He looked up toward Optimus with a pleading expression. Can my sister change for the better? The Autobot leader didn't hesitate to give an honest answer. Yes. Lelouch looked toward Optimus with a hopeful expression as the Prime continued. From what you've told me, it would seem that she truly does care for you and your sister. And despite her flaws and shortcomings, I can see she does indeed have a code of honor. As you've said, the Black Knights won't be so easily acceptant of her. But, if she does choose to come to our side of her own accord, and if she truly desires to aid us. Optimus smiled. She'll have my support. This caused Lelouch to smile, a true genuine smile that he never thought he'd give to anyone with the exception of Nunnally and even Suzaku. Optimus, I never did have a chance to thank you. Lelouch began. You accepted me into your cause and supported me, despite knowing how far from perfect I was. You believed in me, and without you, or Bumblebee, or the others, I don't know where I'd be today. He stood up as he bowed his head humbly to the Autobot leader. Optimus Prime, thank you. I owe you a debt I'll never be able to repay, but I will try. I promise. Optimus kneeled down to be on equal level with the young revolutionary. Lelouch, when we first met, I did recognize someone who was driven by revenge, with anger boiling deep inside. But, at the same time, I also saw someone who was suffering, with a longing desire to protect those he cares for. Someone who was capable of empathy, compassion, and even love. You have many flaws, but I have been impressed by how much you've matured since we've first met. You've even opened up your identity to others and expanded your circle of trust, allowing them to trust you as well. Lelouch v Britannia, I am honored to be your mentor, your ally, as well as your friend. Lelouch had felt a weight lift off his heart. The one being he admired more than anything just said he was honored to work alongside him. Before he knew it, a single tear of joy fell down from Lelouch's own face. I truly believe that you are destined for greatness. Optimus continued. And no matter what happens, I will always be by your side. A warm smile formed on Lelouch's face as he smiled at the Prime. And I'll be by your side too. No matter what, I'll do my best. I know you will. Optimus smiled back. And this is the end of part 11 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.